Morning, midweek. Welcome into 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I'm listening to Mark Janes there on the call, the Indy 500. We were talking in the offices yesterday, KB, about Alex Palou, how all he does is just keep winning races, race after race after race. And can you imagine if he had like the outsized personality of a Helio Castroneves, maybe he'd be a bigger star.
You don't want him in your rearview mirror. Certainly, yeah, I would say that from an entertainment standpoint, and didn't see very strong TV ratings at all for the IndyCar race in thermal. So
let's see if they build on that.
Yeah,
so we'll find out. JB, how you doing today?
Doing good.
No games to go to for you last night, were there?
No games to go to. I was able to catch up on a couple of shows, and then obviously tonight got a big one for the Pacers and Lakers in town.
Looking forward to that one. We'll talk about that all morning long. What did you catch up on last night? What are you all caught up to date with?
I'm watching a new show on Apple TV called Dope Thief. It is, I would give it a C so far. It's not that great, but it's just funny to me. Like, I tend to look at shows that probably aren't the best, and I view them as comedies after a while. I'm like, all right, this is really bad. So I'll continue to watch it because just the thought process in the show is
now
not
you're
that
invested,
great.
right?
Yeah. So I kind of tell them my expectations. I'm not one of those people who are like, this has to be the greatest show ever. It has to be super deep. Like I said the other day, Severance, it kind of, bends my mind too much to a certain degree. So I'm like, let me find something very shallow and very simple that I can kind of laugh at that's probably a little cringe.
Yeah, you told us yesterday Severance kind of frustrated you, right? Too much going on, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't give out any spoilers, but I have opinions about it. So I'll give it about a month. After a month, I'll share my opinions on Severance.
I don't think James appreciates the innies is what I feel like.
Hey, I'm a real life guy. All right.
KB, how about you? Catch up night for you and the fam? What everybody do?
Yeah, I watched a little. If you guys watch any of the Court of Gold on Netflix,
I have not. I think I went over that. Have I told you my Netflix dilemma?
Uh-oh.
No,
I told you this. So I have a Netflix account.
Oh, this is one that you give all your family, right?
And my grandma has it, and it's because before the location things changed and the rules changed, we shared it. But after I moved here to Indianapolis, she's still in Chicago, they changed the rules. I was like, I can't kick grandma off the Netflix account.
Oh, hell no.
So she has. No. She was telling me, I'll have to
She'll
just
be kicking you out of this world if you do that.
She really didn't mind. She was like, I'll have to just get a bill. I'll just pay for it. I'm like, no, I'm not going to make my grandma pay for Netflix. So I have a Netflix account that I don't access.
Venmo request her $7.99 a month.
Exactly. So I pay for it. I just don't see it because she gets to watch, what is it, Virgin River or whatever it is on Netflix and whatever else she likes to watch.
I just want to pinch your cheek. You're such a cute little grandson right now. That's awesome, man.
Grandma costs me $8 a month, and she reminds me every day to go to work, so I keep playing for Netflix.
KB, I was sharing something with you on social media yesterday. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they were chipping from, 50, 60 yards off the green, but they were doing it left-handed with the club upside down. A right-handed
Billy
club.
Horschel, right?
Yeah.
The star of the TGL last night, for those watching it.
It's just incredible, as you pointed out, the eye-hand coordination, but just even the physical touch to be able to do something.
Yeah, that was
like
more than a chip. That was a hell of
a full swing,
hell
right?
of an athletic feat there. But yeah, Court of Gold, for those that haven't watched it, a documentary pretty much around the basketball from the Olympics this past year, primarily with Team USA, but they've got great access to Serbia as well. And at one point last night, Maddie's sitting there, and she like reluctantly, I was like, hey, do you care if I watch something? And I felt like, she's like, okay, fine. And next thing you know, she's like locked in as Kevin Durant. It's like bawling in what the game of basketball means to him.
Right.
It's I would say extremely well done. I'm 3 episodes, maybe 4 episodes in on it. So it's been a great watch.
All right. Kylan, where are you at right now? I know you've been all immersed into all of our sports, the NCAA tournament, the Pacers games, everything else. What did you do with your kind of evening off from sports last night? Or did you have one?
I made a home-cooked meal.
Oh, wow.
Because to be honest, at that point,
I think she won, guys.
Yeah, respect.
What was it?
I made some chicken with couscous and some carrot and tomato glaze on top of it.
Damn, you're not messing around, Kylan.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, everybody was gone when I got home for a while last night. I had Wheaties with protein. That was my dinner last night.
Ooh.
I was tired.
Y'all called me a kid.
I cut up a banana, put some blueberries in there.
It don't matter. Man eating cereal
I've been rewatching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I am excited for the new Ted Lasso season 4. It was just released that they are confirmed doing it, so looking forward to that.
Have you seen all of those, guys? Have you seen that?
Oh,
Kevin?
yeah. No, that's been a universal watch in our household.
Believe it or not, I am only 2 episodes into the second season now. Roy is coaching like the girls' soccer team.
Well, you got plenty of time to catch up before season 4 then.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I did the Severance thing in just like 3 weeks, so that was good. But no, that's what's going on. But we go right back into it full tilt tonight because the Lakers are in town. And, JB, this has been a struggling Lakers team with health and other things. All that good stuff and good feel and good vibes they had 3 weeks ago, that seems to have dried up.
Yeah, they're kind of two teams on different courses right now as far as how they played as of late. You have the Pacers winning their last 5, 8 straight at home. The Lakers, I believe, are 0-3 in their last 3 and struggling since LeBron has come back from the groin injury. But, I mean, as we always say, Pacers fans feel no sympathy for that man or that team, and they shouldn't. So it'll be a good one tonight, and it'll definitely be, I think, another test for this team to kind of play a complete game because, as we know, the Lakers have 2 players who can kind of go out there and take over a game, dominate a game. So if you start bad, if you have a bad quarter or something like that, it could change things, for the team and for their outcome.
KB, what's the key for this game tonight?
Well, I think anytime the Lakers are in town, people are curious about, okay, who's playing? And it does seem like, even though they are on a back-to-back, that both LeBron and Luka will play.
They kind of have to because of the losing streak.
Yeah, they are struggling. Yeah. But, sometimes the back-to-back, do you play the second night? Do you play the first night? Tonight is national TV for those that care about that as well. ESPN 7:30 for the Pacers tonight. I think the key is just make sure you make the Lakers guard. I mean, the Lakers can't guard us right now.
No.
And by us, I mean the 4 of us in the studio. So I'd say that's probably where I'd point to the first key. They're really struggling on that end of the floor. Now, I would hope a little bit of revenge is on the Pacers' minds. I mean, you got absolutely blitzed out there without LeBron, without Luka, about a month ago at this point. In L.A., Austin Reeves went off in that game. So this will be the final back-to-back with the travel. The Pacers will go to the Wizards coming up tomorrow night. They are a slight favorite in this one. I think just bigger picture for the Pacers, and I guess they kind of had a little bit of this feel to them last year. It's a quality that I think is frustrating for a fan, but it does serve you well in the playoffs. The Pacers play to their competition. And
All
again,
year.
that's maddening over the course of 82 nights of the year when you lose or you struggle with some of these bottom feeders. But that also means when these sorts of teams, and maybe not even the Lakers, maybe more like Minnesota on Monday night, some of these better teams do show up on the schedule, the Pacers play very well. So, again, it can be frustrating, but, a month from now, and certainly there was some big playoff news with the Eastern Conference last night that we'll get to later, but that is the quality about this team that they have done very well this season.
Also, we have the coaching carousel continues in college hoops. Will Wade officially goes to North Carolina State. I know they were kind of waiting for the official thing going on there, but it brings me to the point of, do you have any idea as of last night, about 9 o'clock, how many kids had entered the transfer portal in basketball?
Oh, it's got to be over, probably 1,000?
James?
There's 330 teams, right?
Yeah, I'd probably go same as KB.
It was over 1,000. They had within the first 24 hours that they opened the portal, they had
3,
over 700, and now they're at over 1,000.
By the way, speaking of coaching news, I know the job down there in Cincinnati at Xavier is usually like, okay, who should we hire from Butler? That's pretty much like been the revolving, or what retread can we bring back to our program here? Looked like late last night that Richard Pitino heading to Xavier, so him and his father in the same conference. I could not believe that Richard Pitino is only 42 years old. I feel like he's been a head coach in college basketball for like 15 years.
He has been. When was he up in Minnesota?
He was in Minnesota forever. If I'm not mistaken, I swear he was at like Florida, maybe not Atlantic, maybe Florida International before that. So Richard Pitino, I like that hire for Xavier.
He's been a good coach. And we all know his dad can coach. And I think from a coaching perspective, at least the apple didn't fall too far from that tree. All right, coming up in a moment, we will give you the check down, get you ready to go for another busy day in sports tonight. And it's opening day week. We have opening day tomorrow, but not today. So I'm getting excited about baseball. Everybody is broken camp and skedaddled back to their home cities or wherever they're going to be playing the first game. So we'll tell you about that as we continue next. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan on a Wednesday morning. All right, in basketball, later on tonight, the Lakers make a stop, their only stop of the season at Gainbridge Fieldhouse against the Pacers. That one starts at 7:30 tonight, and I don't believe this is a FanDuel game, Kevin Bowen.
I thought ESPN, they do them on both. I thought TNT was the only exclusive. Kristen Airy, right. Jeremiah Johnson, Eddie Gill, if you guys are listening, let me know. But I would rather watch you guys. I believe it is on both tonight, and if you want to attend this game, the secondary ticket market is juicy. I would assume this is probably the most expensive ticket of the year.
We are sending Kylan to the game to represent us tonight for the Fan Morning Show. How about that, Kylan?
I am hype.
Yeah, let's go do that. Anyway, that one starts at 7:30, and of course, can always listen to the games wherever you are here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan with the great Mark Boyle. Looking forward to that. Milwaukee plays in Denver tonight as the evening starts. The Pacers with a 2-game advantage for the 4th spot in the Eastern Conference. They did lose a half game to Detroit, who's also creeping up behind them as the Pistons won last night over the Spurs, 122-96. Important to keep this going, KB, tonight.
Well, yeah, we should mention just awful news on the Damian Lillard front. Announced late last night, blood clot in his right calf. He's on blood-thinning medication. You know, the statement that he released to Chris Haynes, I mean, anytime you're throwing in there, you know, priorities are protect my health and safety. As much as I love basketball, I need to be there for my kids and family. Just awful. So we'll see exactly, obviously, thoughts of Damian Lillard first. But, you know, from a Pacers standpoint, how long he's going to be out. Out indefinitely was the phrasing from the Bucks here. I mean, we're 3.5 weeks away from the playoffs. It is, I mean, I feel like
tough.
it really gets here quickly there. So
yeah, I thought the framing of the injury or the blood clot was interesting because when we've seen other players have blood clots, it's usually you're out for the rest of the season. And so indefinitely, I mean, will we see him play again this year? I think that's a real question and a serious question. So obviously feel for Dame. It's something you're out of your control. And you know we care about the health first, but from like the standing standpoint, it's a huge blow for the Bucks, who it seems like every year they have something pop up around the playoffs time. And looking back at that 2021 run when they won it all, I mean, you're very fortunate to just take advantage of it, I guess, which is what every team hopes to do because you're just never guaranteed to get back. I mean, Siakam said that for the Pacers last year after they made it to the conference finals.
Yeah, you can't fall out of bed and expect to be there.
Exactly.
All right, the Indiana Hoosiers introduced their 31st head basketball coach at an introductory press conference in the last 24 hours. And there was a big checklist that the president of IU had for this one. And then she basically said that Darian DeVries checked off all the boxes. CEO of a program, winning history, cares about the student-athletes and their experience, all those kinds of things, JB.
Winning helps as well, and when you can have that on your resume, you know, you took Drake from nothing to something and then also flipped West Virginia in 1 year there, I think that definitely helps. And then, you know, having your son come along too isn't too bad of a deal. So we'll see how it goes. I definitely think that his personality is very reserved. As KB said, he'll probably want to lock himself in the basement of Assembly Hall, just watch film. But part of it being in this Big Ten bubble, this IU bubble in particular, is the added attention, the pressure, everything that comes with being the face of that program.
Only other notes I had from yesterday, Russell Wilson off to the Giants. That is a whole lot of money that they're paying Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Sounds like the Aaron Rodgers saga with Pittsburgh is rather imminent, so it looks like the quarterback carousel here for 2025, non-draft related, could be over, and Andrew Luck has his first bit of business, I would say major business, across the desk of the general manager of the Stanford Cardinal, letting Troy Taylor go yesterday for bullying staff members, I believe was what the phrasing was there. So it didn't sound like Luck was super committed to maybe hiring a permanent head coach. Obviously, it's kind of an awkward time to hire a head coach on March 26th. But nonetheless, Andrew Luck dealing with some drama out there on the farm.
More importantly, I like the fact that you're conserving paper, but I look at your notes for today, and on the other side, I just noticed as you're holding it up, you have a Super Bowl bingo.
Super Bowl
chart.
Bingo, yeah. I printed off far too many of them. So
How'd you do on Super Bowl bingo?
Let's not waste paper here. Let's make sure that we conserve a little. I don't think I did very well, if I remember correctly. But boy, the kids were locked in on it.
I see the push-tush. What else did we have on there?
Yeah, we got, Kendrick Lamar halftime show. Any team scores 20 points. 2-point conversion, Taylor Swift shown, Boom, boom. Yeah, this was great now that I'm looking at it again.
Was there a
Those
box?
all sound like free spots to me,
Yeah.
KB.
Well,
Those weren't very hard.
You got to stick with it, though. You can't just bail on the game. You know,
You got to mark your squares off as it goes.
any team scores 20 points. It took a while. Did the Chiefs even get to 20? I'm trying to think if they
I was
did.
gonna say, is there a square on there for when the Chiefs got down 30?
There was not, but
All right, just checking on that. All right, that's your morning check down for today. A busy day today for basketball. Obviously, as we prepare for the Sweet 16 coming up at Lucas Oil this weekend, we got some Pacers business to take care of, and we're going to dive deep into that coming up in just a moment as they head down the stretch. And also, I want to ask you guys, the NBA is they're exploring a brand new overseas league. I want to get your thoughts on that later as we continue on the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, Jeff, and Kylan in for Mark today. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I like it. Looking forward to the Lakers and Pacers later on tonight. And do we know the relative health of the Pacers going into this game as far as who's expected to play or not?
Again, Rick Carlisle told us yesterday that the thought was Tyrese Haliburton would play on both ends of these back-to-backs here coming up. So this is the final travel one of the year. Again, Lakers tonight at Wizards for what it's worth. The Lakers injury report with LeBron and Luka looks to be pretty clean. Again, they have certainly been reeling majorly here as of late. Lost 3 in a row and really getting run off the floor in a lot of these games. They're 3 and I think 7 in the last 10, lost by an average of 15. So, yeah, health-wise tonight, it looks to be pretty good for both teams.
Yeah, as of the last injury report, LeBron is probable with a groin. Rui Hachimura, another starter for him, is probable with a left patellar tendinopathy. I usually heard say that. These things are too complicated. He's probable as well. And then the Pacers don't have anybody that's, I guess in their starting rotation or in their rotation that's on the injury report at all. So they should be healthy and good to go against a team that's, obviously talented and they're trying to knock off.
Pacers have won 5 games in a row. You mentioned the Lakers have lost 3 games in a row. Looks like most people will be available, and that'll be a lot of fun. But again, I want to go back to something you mentioned in the check down, KB. Just terrible news for Damian Lillard and Milwaukee, because that's life-threatening stuff when you start talking about deep vein thrombosis. You got to sit back.
Yeah, blood clot in the right calf. Out indefinitely. Obviously, you think about him and his family first and foremost there. If you do want to play the basketball game for a little bit and just, okay, what could that mean for the Bucks? I know some people have mentioned before, flying is also
it's tough. Yeah, you're not supposed to do it.
No. Yeah. There's part of me that even is reluctant to even go here. It's like, well, I mean, if the Pacers-Bucks did play in a series, I mean, they could drive him to the games here. And again, I feel unfair of myself to even say that. But obviously it's terrible news for Damian Lillard himself, but for the Bucks as well, trying to make any sort of run. Again, Middleton, they traded at the deadline. They got Kyle Kuzma. And Lillard, for the most part, I feel like has been pretty healthy this season. And so, just awful announcement yesterday from the Bucks there, as not only could they be the Pacers' opponent, but certainly competing for home court here in round 1.
Yeah, and you take a look now at the teams that are chasing the Pacers. We just talked about the Bucks. The Detroit Pistons are playing pretty good basketball these days. They keep an eye on them in the rearview mirror, but if you just keep winning and doing what you're doing with Pacers, you'll be fine. But keep an eye on that because I want that home court advantage after last year. You want to keep that as long as you can get it going. Absolutely.
I mean, that'll be a big factor in, just your playoff potential. And obviously you want to get as many home games as possible. And I think the Pacers, as we've seen as of late, play well at home. And so you want to get those guys confident. I think a guy like Benedict Mathurin, you'd prefer for his first playoff experience to be, at home. Or I don't know, maybe he's just crazy enough where it doesn't matter for him. But the team is playing well. And, I mean, the reality is Dame's situation does affect the playoff picture. And so that doesn't mean we're not sympathetic towards that, but it doesn't not affect them in some sort of way. So you feel for the guy, but also reality tells you that, maybe you have to get a little bit of these types of situations and get through them to figure out, what's next for the team. So from the Bucks standpoint, you're just trying to figure out how to tread water and get to the playoffs, and you trust Giannis to be Giannis. But for the Pacers, this standpoint, it's like, all right, well, let's hope that we can stay healthy and kind of avoid some of these situations.
You would still rather play the Pistons than the Bucks, though? If you could pick one or the other here in round 1?
If Dame is in or out?
If Dame is out.
If Dame is out, I'd rather play Bucks.
Even with Giannis?
Even with Giannis, yes.
Right now, both those teams 2 games behind the Pacers in the Eastern Conference. So we'll watch that race for you as we go. Interesting, go back to the conversation that was had with Rick Carlisle on the show yesterday. KB, what was your big 1 or 2 takeaways from the conversation?
Well, I thought the Haliburton, praise and, James, asked him about those point guards and, the history of what Rick Carlisle's had in the league. And sometimes you do have to just kind of take the reins off a little bit.
Was it Chauncey Billups, Jason Kidd, Luka, Tyrese?
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty who's who.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be, at times, it could be difficult as a coach of like, boy, you do just kind of have to sit back and let those talents just be those talents. And the Haliburton numbers are video game-like. I mean, it is, I think since the All-Star break, I saw yesterday, I want to say it's 142 assists to 13 turnovers.
Yep.
I mean, that
since
is...
the All-Star break?
So
that
basically,
is stupid.
Basically 14-to-1 ratio.
And it's not like he is also, contributing 5 points a game. He's also contributing like 20 points a night. So it's amazing what he has done since the All-Star break. And as I said yesterday, it's not like he's, at Butler basketball camp simply throwing chest passes to start the day and, making sure that the bounce pass has his thumbs pointed out towards his target here. I mean, this is a guy that is throwing some pretty risky passes and yet seemingly is pulling it off on a nightly basis. And remember, early in the year, I felt like there were times where, teams would throw a longer defender at him and they could limit the head of the snake a little bit and they could kind of take that away. And we really haven't seen that here at all lately. Is that simply you've fallen into the right matchups? Is Haliburton now much healthier than he was at the start of the year when he clearly battled an offseason where he never, I think, A, had the chance to rest, or B, was fully healthy with the Olympics, bleeding into late September, really, based off when he got back here to the States. So he has played at a $200 million All-NBA level here over the last month and a half, and obviously you hope you bottle that up and continue it for the next X amount of weeks.
And James, I tend to think that, to Kevin's point, that he is feeling healthy and good and refreshed, probably for the first time all season. It was, they've given him a lot of rest lately, and I think that that's been a wise idea because, as you know, you start going up against longer guys, you really need your quickness and that first step explosiveness. And if you don't have that, you're not feeling all that great. You are going to be limited in that regard.
Absolutely. I think he's limited to some degree because of his size anyway. I know he's 6'5", but he's kind of light. And if you look at the best playoff performers, whether it's from, eras past or the current era, the guys who are usually like the finals MVP or the Eastern Conference Finals MVP or whatever, they're usually like big wings. They're big players. I mean, I had to think about this myself, and this is might be shocking to some people listening. When Steph Curry won Finals MVP a couple years ago, he was the first guard to win it since Kobe in 2010. That was 12 years. Like, if you think of it, it's always wings. And so I say all that to say, when Tyrese is playing at this level, you want to be healthy because the bumps and bruises and all that stuff is coming. It's a more physical game in the playoffs. I think he can play that style of basketball, but obviously you want him going into it with more health than he's had in the previous years. And I think even last year, I just remember walking out of some of those playoff games, man, and they have like a training room in the locker room when you're walking out, and you'd see like the door cracked and he's in there getting like some deep massage on his back, and you just know he's not right. He's telling us after every game, oh, I'm fine, I'm going to go out there and play hard and no excuses. And we're like, you're moving like you're hurt because you are hurt. And so I think now we're seeing some of that pay off as far as his health and also just the joy of the game. Like, he's not looking as frustrated with himself because he can actually be himself.
And KB, just the cast in general has played so well lately. One night it's Obi Toppin. Miles Turner was 3 of 6 from three-point range the other night, and he got hot during a big 20-point difference in a third quarter. We've seen T.J. McConnell and that bench group come off the bench constantly and outplay the other team's bench players. I mean, it's been a joy to watch the last 3-4 weeks of this team. And I mentioned a moment ago, yesterday, I should say, since the 10-15 start, they're 32-14. Let's go. They're playing really good basketball right now.
Yeah, and again, they have played their best against the best competition, which, like I was saying a little bit earlier, it can be frustrating when some of these lottery-bound teams show up on the schedule and the Pacers struggle or lose. Granted, they won 5 in a row and 7 of 8. But the flip side of that is you don't see any of those teams come a month from today. And so I do think that is something that is a strength of theirs. And I just think in general with how they play, the depth, the willingness to pick up full court, they are a tough 48-minute out over a 7-game series. I don't know if I walk in there and think, oh, they're going to represent the Eastern Conference. I'm not going to make some hyperbolic statement like that. But I do think if you were to poll some coaches around the Eastern Conference and who would they want to see across them in a series, I don't know if many of them would vote for the Pacers on a very high level because I think they realize that it is a tough thing to kind of put them fully away. I think we saw that last year, certainly. Even in that Celtics series, I mean, those were some very competitive 48-minute games that, frankly, the Pacers blew several of those games. So I do think that is something that's going for them as well.
JB, I want to talk a little bit about the roster makeup, the constitution as well. You have Haliburton right now that's playing on an all-world level. We just talked about that. The numbers are insane. Past that, though, I don't know that they overwhelm teams with just far superior talent every night. But at the same time, there really isn't a weakness 1 through 8. Guys are pretty good players.
Yeah, I think one of their weaknesses will probably be rebounding. They have to be better at that for sure. I also think that Siakam, as of late, hasn't looked like himself. I know he's had some moments here or there. Defensively, he's been exposed over the last few games, and I think that he has to be a lot better on that end. So there's some weaknesses there, but I just think that their floor and their ceiling, the Pacers, to me, their floor is, to KB's point, they kind of play down to whoever they're playing, so they play up to whoever they're. So their ceiling is high too. It's just, can you get a version of the Pacers where they're not playing to anybody else's standard but their own? And that's the challenge for them, because on any given night, I'm like, wow, this team is really bad. And I've had moments where I'm like, well, how the heck did they make the playoffs last year? And I'm sure some fans are kind of wondering the same thing some nights. And then other nights, I'm like, wow, this team could go out there and beat, the Celtics or beat the Cavaliers on any given night. So we'll see how it all kind of shakes out. But I definitely think they're playing their best basketball, or at least wins-wise, at this point in the season. You want to get some more calm wins and not stressful wins. So maybe that'll happen again tonight against the Lakers. But I can't complain too much about what the Pacers are doing, especially when you have your best player playing at that level leading the way.
All right, couple of things to note in the National Football League as you listen to the Fan Morning Show here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. KB, you mentioned that Russell Wilson has signed with the New York Giants, but how about the New England Patriots picking up Stephon Diggs, who, when healthy last year, put up some incredibly impressive metrics with the Houston Texans?
He got hurt against the Colts, actually. I believe that's when he tore his ACL. I want to say it might have been like week 8 or something like that. Actually, I remember it was week 8 because that was the same game that was a tap out, and they benched Anthony afterwards.
Yeah, kind of the Halloween game.
Yeah,
Richardson threw that pick.
So he was having a really strong season, and I believe, what was it, 3 years, 69 or 60-something million, $26 million guaranteed, I believe. So it's always look at guaranteed money for those listening. Look at the contracts, look at the guaranteed money, understand how much money was really invested. But, I mean, that's an interesting pickup for the Patriots. They added someone who can help, be that check down guy for Drake May. And to kind of tie it back to our local angle here with the Colts, that's what the Colts need to do if they're looking for tight end. Get somebody that can be a check down dude for Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, I suppose, who can move the ball, keep the chains going, because you need that. And I think part of the struggles we've seen with Anthony aren't all on him. It's, can you get him a tight end that's actually relevant?
We talked about it to end the show yesterday. There wasn't very much appointment television last night, but I did alert our audience. We did have our first Colts behind the scenes series, and again, they've done this now for several years. The With the Next Pick, I think, is what a lot of fans are used to. It's very well done. Any behind the scenes content, I think, is something that fans should be gravitating towards. Is it, FBI secrets? No, but it still is.
Oh, I was looking for all the big boards. I was looking for everything in there. Oh, did they edit
James
this correctly?
Frame by frame.
I know, man. I saw Shane's schedule, KB, and he actually had eats lunch on there, and I was like, wow, that man is locked in. He has to put how to remember to eat on his schedule.
Yeah, he's got the Nick Saban. He eats the same thing every day. But last night, the one that they showed was a little bit more of a glimpse into free agency. I thought it really focused on Cam Bynum and kind of showed the spirit of him, a little bit into Mooney Ward, and then Daniel Jones, a little bit brief on Ward and Jones.
Did they get the PJ out for Daniel Jones? I didn't see that in the video. I want to ask this so bad.
I think he was on Spirit. Daniel Jones.
They brought the private jet out for everyone else.
Did they pay for the extra bags?
Yeah. I don't know how. Maybe Ubered. I know.
It's where's Daniel Jones' family?
It's been a joke with some quarterbacks before.
They brought their crews in there. We didn't see any loved ones.
Some
Daniel
guys
Jones.
get the press conference live. Some guys get the Zoom live. Yeah, I mean, it is a lot of dictating on how big your contract is. But we did hear from Chris Ballard, and it was the first time that he has touched on any of these free agents. And the Daniel Jones comments right here. This is Chris Ballard again. Last night, this is from the Colts behind the scenes video that they put up on their YouTube page. Chris Ballard's comments on Daniel Jones.
Competition brings out the best in anybody. It's a competitive league. They're not just bringing in anybody. It had to be somebody who's really going to be able to challenge Anthony. And I think it's going to go both ways. I think Anthony will challenge Daniel also. Between Daniel and Anthony, you're going to see a really good competition. It's going to be spirited competition, but I also think it's one that's going to be where they help each other to grow too. And so we thought Daniel's skill set and Anthony's skill set, there's a lot of similarities there. So offensively, I think that's going to help, our offensive staff say, okay, we don't have to make these wholesale changes with one guy or the other. We got to make the best decision for the team. Whatever the outcome is based on performance. Excited about both of them, excited to get Daniel in the building. I think he's a really good fit for what we want to do and who he is as a person and who he can be as a player.
He's only 27 years old, Kevin, Daniel Jones. It's not like it's an older guy here. Do we truly, it sounds like it there, but do you still expect to see a true competition, or does Anthony just have to fall down all over himself to not win that job?
Yeah, I think it's largely the latter. You mentioned his age, 27 years old. He also has 70 starts, though. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is a lot. I mean, right now, people are ready to be done with Anthony Richardson after 15 starts. Can you imagine Anthony Richardson starting 55 more games here in Indianapolis?
And kind of ending up in the same place.
So, yeah that's where I probably put a little pause. James, your thoughts on hearing from Chris Ballard for the first time in regards to Daniel Jones?
I thought it was in line with what he said in the past. They're going to push each other, I know he's talked about this player in particular, but he has said repeatedly, hey, we want somebody to push Anthony, raise level of play. Competition is good for everybody. All that sounds great, but to me, I am still in the camp of Anthony could throw the ball in the dirt every single snap during the preseason, and he's going to start week 1. That's just my opinion. Like, I cannot picture them pulling the plug on the number 4 pick.
What about off the field stuff?
I mean, I think that the benching last year was a wake-up call for him. I don't think we'll hear anything more about you not working hard, you not staying early or coming early, staying late, all of those cliches that we hear about. I think that he's definitely going to do that, mainly because he'll have no choice. I mean, you all know how it goes. If the new person comes in, they're doing all the goody two-shoes stuff. You don't want to be the person that's not doing what everyone else is doing. And so I think that he's definitely going to have to be more professional, even if he doesn't want to stay late. But Daniel Jones is in there going through plays. Brother, pull up a chair. You need to be the most annoying, QB in the room next to him, all those things. And it will be awkward. I know he said it's going to be, good competition, spirited competition. It's going to be very awkward as well. I would not care. I would definitely make sure that whatever Daniel Jones is doing, I'm doing times 2, hopefully, to keep my job.
I think what makes part of this challenging is if either quarterback somehow turns it around, it'll be unprecedented, frankly, in the NFL. You don't see quarterbacks with 70 career starts all of a sudden turn it around. You don't see quarterbacks with the completion percentage that Anthony Richardson has through 2 years turn it around. I mean, we're talking very few in the history of the NFL have ever done that.
Do we look at a Baker Mayfield type guy who's gotten it together the last couple of years?
Baker wasn't as bad as Richardson, and he didn't have 70 starts at Cleveland like Daniel Jones had with the Giants. So, again, it would be unprecedented. I think that's a fair statement to make. You can find 1 or 2 outliers over the history of the NFL, but these do not grow on trees. These are not annual, boy, this quarterback did that. Geno Smith didn't have those starts at the Jets. Again, Sam Darnold didn't have those starts either. So I bring all that up to say this. I think what makes it very difficult is to truly get either of these guys better, because they both need to be better, right?
Yes. They're the same player.
Either of them better, they need a ton of reps.
Yeah.
I'd argue they need all the reps. So are you going to commit to one guy and say, hey, we need to get one of you two better? Because if we split reps on a daily basis, we're just going to have the same 2 mediocre quarterbacks when it's all said and done. I think that is one of the bigger challenges of this, of a true competition here. Yeah, while it might be a good battle, it's a battle of bad quarterbacks. Do you want to try and say, all right, in the spirit of competition, we might have to lose out a little bit on it, but we need to commit to one of you two and give you the vast majority of the reps, 3-4 days in a row, however you want to define it, preseason reps. We're going to give you the lion's share with the first team offense, and then you hope that one of the two get better. I think that is something that has got to be explored. And, again, in my case, if you're going to pick one of the two, I'd probably opt for the guy that has never had a healthy NFL offseason. And Anthony Richardson, this being the first one. Okay, let's see what happens. You've got more of the investment in him versus the guy with 70 career starts who, yeah, he might give you a little bit of a higher floor, but let's be honest, Band-Aids in the AFC, they ain't getting you anywhere.
I'm going to read you a quote. The most frustrating part from a team and fan angle is that he really looks the part. In shorts and certain OTAs, he looks like he was built in a lab, but he could just never put it all together. Who am I talking about?
I think I've heard that quote before. You'd think it's Anthony Richardson, but I think it's Daniel Jones.
There you go. Like, that's from our reporter at The Athletic, the Giants reporter, Dan Duggan, told me that a couple weeks ago. They're the same player, just at different timelines. And so I would obviously take the younger prospect, and I do think that Anthony has more upside because of just the otherworldly physical abilities, but the other factor there is the health. Can you stay healthy? But they're the same player, and I think that when you look at Daniel Jones, if you're the same player, essentially, with the passing and the rushing, and here's Dan again. I asked him, what are the strengths of Daniel Jones' games and what's holding back from being a franchise quarterback? The first thing he says is, I think the biggest thing with him is his rushing ability. That's not very encouraging if you want to ask about a quarterback, and the first thing you bring up is his legs. But that's the same thing with Anthony. Mm-hmm. He cannot be a top-level player without using his legs. And so I just think that if you're going to take a gamble, you want to lean towards Anthony because you just haven't seen him really put it all together, and perhaps he's younger and you're more inclined to think that it's still possible. But for Daniel, he is who he is. I think the best case scenario for him, if he were to start, would be to have a season like he had when they went to the playoffs in New York in 2022. I believe that year Daniel Jones had 15 passing touchdowns, 7 rushing touchdowns, over like 700 yards rushing, and they made the playoffs, and he scored 22 total touchdowns. And it was very safe football. It was safe. It was effective. You got to the playoffs. You actually won a game. I'll give Daniel Jones credit for that. But no one ever felt like they were going to go win a Super Bowl. And that's the problem. Like you said, KB, like, you cannot get by kind of just coasting here in the AFC. There's a bunch of dogs at the quarterback position who are going to pick you apart when it matters the most. And so that's why I'd lean towards Anthony. But again, it's up to him. And I mean, not to just overlook it, the health is probably the biggest factor.
Well,
he hasn't played.
And that aspect too, James. Yesterday we talked a little bit about the Quinn Ewers, top 30 visit with the Colts, and should the Colts draft a quarterback? If so, when would they draft a quarterback? I think something that I didn't mention yesterday that is probably worth going back to in regards to that topic. This is not Richardson. This is not Jones. But you do, I guess it is Richardson. You do bring up his health. How many times has Sam Ehlinger been a backup the last 2 years?
Half a dozen?
Yeah.
No, way more than that. I mean, Gardner Minshew started how many games?
That's if you go back to Minshew, yeah.
When Gardner Minshew started, Sam Ehlinger was the backup.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right? When Joe Flacco started, Sam Ehlinger was the backup. So Sam Ehlinger's not here. Joe Flacco is not here. They both are still in the open market as free agents. So if Richardson has the same bill of health that he has had in recent years, you're going to need a backup for Daniel Jones. So that is something that, again, it might not be the most.
Yeah.
That third quarterback, I know we just scoff at and we just kind of, you're going to hold a Microsoft Surface and have an earpiece in. But Sam Ehlinger was one play away for what? I mean, Minshew started 12, 13 games for you. Sam Ehlinger has been your backup for 16, 17 games over the last 2 years. So that third quarterback, I know it's not top of mind, and Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, and again, they still need help, in my opinion, at defensive line, a little bit of O-line. I think linebacker could use a piece as well. That extra quarterback, I know it sounds weird to say, but that third quarterback here in Indy probably means a little bit more than it does in some other places where you don't worry about quarterback health as much.
I'm going to make just to play devil's advocate, Daniel Jones has a 70 touchdown to 47 interception ratio, which is better than the 11 to 13 that AR has. And I get different sample size, but also Jones throws for better than 64% accuracy. Richardson 50% for his career, and already 2,179 rushing yards for Daniel Jones. They are, in a lot of senses, the same quarterback, but you have a much more accurate Daniel Jones. That's the case that you would make for him.
Oh, yes, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here, devil's advocate. Look at the air yards per attempt. Daniel Jones doesn't throw the ball down the field. He plays very safe. And again, that's okay. It'll get you a couple of wins.
Can we blend the two?
And I mean, maybe, but I think for Daniel Jones, seriously, if he's looking at this as a reset opportunity, a chance for me to show that I'm still a starter in the NFL and I could be a franchise quarterback, he has to throw the ball down the field. That's just the bottom line. I mean, I'm looking at some of these, air yards per attempt. 5.2 completed air yards per attempt last year. 4.3 the year before. 5.1. You're not
You
throwing
see
it
those in
anywhere.
the 7s
Yeah,
and 8s.
this is dink and dunk with
That's
the
what I'm saying,
ability
like-
to pick up a random third down as a
And
scramble.
what was it with Gardner Minshew? It was dink and dunk, and it worked. It got him on the doorstep of the playoffs, but it doesn't get you anywhere beyond that. And so you look at Anthony, it's like, okay, well, that's the thing that he does do well. He pushes the ball down the field, and I do think that they have to tailor some of the offense, so it isn't so much like boom or bust. But with Anthony, those numbers, I believe, are a lot different. And even last year, he was 8.2 completed air yards per attempt, which is a lot different. I'm not saying it's all about that, but to change defenses and change the way your offense operates, you got to throw the ball down the field at least a little bit, because to me, it's frustrating to have the same thing happen over and over again and expect a different result. Like if he's throwing it from me to you, Jeff, it's going to be a long Colts season with that offense.
Again, that clip, courtesy of that Behind the Colts series on their YouTube page. I know I'm going to miss out on people, but Matt Wilkeney, Kevin Connors, Larry Overton, company over there, they do great work when it comes to those videos. So I think you'll learn a lot. Not just the Ballard comments. Honestly, the Ballard comments are probably sprinkled in. I'd say the heavy focus is Cam Bynum, and you will see the pure joy on his face throughout a large portion of that video. Coming up next, much more on Darren DeVries down there in Bloomington. Tony Adragna does great work when it comes to the IU basketball beat, and on a little bit of a different spin on it. We'll get Tony's thoughts on what he thinks about the hire and where things go from here in Bloomington. Some Purdue action coming up in the 9 o'clock hour with Brian Neubert as we are one step closer to Friday night at Lucas Oil Stadium. This is the Fan Morning Show, 8 o'clock hour on a Wednesday. from Kylan Talley leading us back. 8 o'clock hour. We need this about 3 minutes to go tonight inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Pacers-Lakers. Triple digits. That'll be your cheapest ticket on the secondary market if you're curious. LeBron and Luka sounds like they will be giving it a go tonight. They are on a back-to-back, as are the Pacers on a back-to-back. But right now the injury report indicates pretty good health for both teams here. The Lakers are reeling, and the Pacers are one of the hottest teams in the league. All right, we'll talk some college hoops as well throughout the show today. We'll get the Purdue flavor coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. Let's talk more about Darren DeVries with our next guest, Tony Adragna. You've heard him on these airwaves before. Does an outstanding work in covering the IU beat from afar. Tony joins us here. Tony, good morning to you. How are you? Hello. Do we have him?
Good morning, Tony.
Are we having phone issues on this Wednesday morning?
We may be.
We might be. I'm like, dang, is it that bad in Bloomington already?
It happens.
No.
Yeah.
I think things are looking up after the hire of Darren DeVries. And hopefully we can get Tony real soon. But I'll start with this, KB. When it comes to the transfer portal, we see all these guys going in and out. How much do you think that just affects how you're able to build your vision with your roster? Like, will this version of the IU team next year be what we see down the line, or is it kind of just like we plug and play and we figure it out just in year one on the fly?
I think it's that. Yeah, I think it's the 1 year on the fly, or I should say year one is just different. It's kind of funny because in our state, though, we have two power programs, right? You have two programs and obviously let's put Notre Dame to the side for a second. Purdue and Indiana, they are operating in different ways. Purdue is actually trying to zag with all of college basketball. I know the graphic went viral yesterday. I'm sure you guys saw the graphic of the starting fives of the Sweet 16 teams. Now, Matt Painter, and this is a question I want to ask Brian Neubert when he joins us. Certainly I care about Friday night with Purdue, but Matt Painter did, I think, hint at a little bit of we do need to be, or we will be, I think, a little bit more active in the portal. Okay, what exactly does that mean? Now, Indiana, I would argue one of the biggest issues in the Mike Woodson era is they didn't get enough homegrown guys to grow into nice players for them 2 and 3 years into their careers.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not acting like that's where your stars come from. I mean, look at the list yesterday. You obviously saw a ton of portal, but
Houston's best player is like a transfer. So
right, and Houston actually hasn't portaled it up as much.
Yeah.
Yes, their best player is a Baylor transfer, but still they haven't been as much. Michigan State, 4 of their 5 guys, homegrown guys. Obviously, Duke has lived in a very loaded freshman talent as well. So I guess to answer your question, I think the DeVries situation will be heavy portal certainly this year, but I think moving forward you will see some Purdue-like recruiting classes there. Not maybe the most eye-popping necessarily. Yes, they're going to have, elite recruits playing for them, but not just living in that. A few of those guys that, hey, Matt Roth would have been a really nice championship piece for you. Those sorts of pieces that you do have. Mason Gillis. Why was Duke interested in Mason Gillis? A piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
I think you'll see more of that from Darren DeVries.
The stats that you were talking about with the starting fives yesterday, in case people missed that, only 5 of the 16 teams left in the NCAA tournament have a starting 5 in which at least 3 players started their college basketball career at their current school. Purdue, 5 of 5. 5 of 5. All 5 guys started their careers at Purdue. Duke has 4 of 5. Of course, they're all sophomores and freshmen over there. Michigan State, 4 of 5. BYU, 3 of 5. Houston, 3 of 5. How about that? Only 5 of the 16 with at least 3 that started their careers at the school they're playing at.
That kind of makes sense because KB's hating on Cinderella, Arkansas, who has a bunch of guys who came there out of the kindness of their heart. KB, no money involved. No, I'm definitely lying on that. Like I could see that. I think that just hats off to the way Purdue has built this thing, and also they want to stay. That's the opposite flip side of it is like you want to stay, you want to be involved with the program because we see Gillis move on to Duke, but most of Purdue's top talent during this Matt Painter era hasn't really left. If they believed in you early on, they've stayed. They've kind of weathered the storm, and now we're seeing certain guys get opportunities, and it's paying off for them in a big way.
And the guys he brings in end up staying, but also they're all great contributors, Kevin. Like, where are these guys going to get a better deal for the most part to play for a team and a coach like Matt Painter, where I'm sure you're getting your NIL as well, and you're going to the Sweet 16 or beyond every year, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to think purely from a financial sense, maybe you could cash in on your top dollar somewhere else. But if you want to win and you want to be a part of a consistent product and you still want to get a nice payday, certainly there's no argument. It was funny when that got kind of sent around the horn yesterday. I was in a group text where there was a little bit of a devil's advocate from, and again, to be clear, this is from an IU side of it. The devil's advocate says it's cool that they all stay and play at Purdue, but as a fan, wouldn't you want a stud or two coming in to have a real shot at running a back? I don't think anyone thought heading into the season that Caleb First and CJ Cox and Miles Colvin were going to take you back to the title game without Edey and Gillis.
Good point.
The pushback I would have to that is bring in a stud or two. I don't think a stud or two is walking into the situation when Purdue's running it back with who they thought were studs in Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn. I mean, right there, it's not like Purdue lost Edey, but they said, and this is a credit to Matt Painter, he viewed Trey Kaufman-Renn as having this major ascension into being the type of player that we've seen. I thought Kaufman-Renn would be more of a 13-8 guy. I didn't think he'd be. That dude's 20 points seemingly every night,
and he's been big in big
huge
spots lately.
So I think that's a little bit of the counter to maybe that point. But in general, I'm fascinated to see how Purdue will move forward if they do dip their toes into it all. Because again, on paper, guys, they can bring back everybody besides Caleb First, and they're going to add Daniel Jacobson, who broke his leg in opening night. Now,
well, how about this comment?
And this is assuming everybody is coming back that is in their rotation.
Oh, speaking of people coming back, here's a comment from our YouTube chat, which I just laughed at. It said, UK fans down here in Kentucky say there is Braden Smith portal chatter to UK for big money.
That seems to be like a social media thing.
People are trying to will that into existence. They're trying to will that into existence, right?
I just got some random text, Kentucky and Kansas rumored offering
Braden Smith will be in a Purdue uniform
the
next
Brinks
season.
trunk for it.
I'm sorry to break the hearts of any Kentucky fans who hope to get the best point guard in the country on their team. So, no, that is not going to happen.
Also, Matt Painter is going to be on with JMV, I suppose, later on today. So keep an ear out for that as well.
Maybe JMV can just ask him, And in all seriousness, though, I know the Braden Smith thing is just wild. But I would be very interested to hear his thought process in those conversations around the portal and around his team building for next season. Like, do you have, seriously, I know, KB, you joked about it tongue-in-cheek yesterday, but do you seriously sit down with some of your players who might be your 7th, 8th, 9th guy and say, hey, do you still want to be here next year? Because that portal window is open and you do have to address it. I know your main focus is winning the game against Houston.
It's awkward as hell.
But, you can't, stick your head in the sand and hope for the best. Like, that would just be naive.
Yeah, it's awkward as hell to have to go through that. I think yesterday Kentucky mentioned, Mark Pope was like, yeah, I was on the phone with portal guys. And it's like, okay, if you're on the phone with portal guys, is that taking minutes away from guys that are on your own program right now that think they're going to send into that next role?
Yeah.
So this kind of goes back to the conversation we had yesterday. In my opinion, the portal opening up, it gives too big of advantage to the teams that have already had their seasons over. I don't think these Sweet 16 teams should be punished for still playing.
Right.
Because it's easy for the Notre Dames and the Butlers of the world to sit there right now and say, hey, look at our roster. We need to get better, blah, 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 blah. And they're not dealing with we're playing for a trip to the Elite Eight. Can you imagine?
But it's also not fair to the players like Pippen at Michigan, where I know he's not playing and he hasn't played a ton, but now he's got to make a decision that he probably already made a few weeks ago.
Take that decision out of his hands. Push the portal window to April 5th or whatever, April 10th, like we talked about yesterday. And then for the most part, you have, I think, quieted a little bit. And again, on the list of guardrails that are needed, this is just one of them. There are many others that are necessary for this. But I guess getting back to Friday night, again, Purdue is a 7.5-point underdog. Brian Neubert from Golden Black going to join us here coming up at 9:30. The Kaufman-Renn, can he still be kind of the walking double-double and not be in foul trouble? I think continues to be, to me, outside of the Braden Smith, just quarterbacking and all, that to me is the biggest storyline. Because with Houston, they're going to throw a double right at you. And if that takes away Kaufman-Renn's scoring production, now can he facilitate out of those double teams? Does he make the right plays? Does it not turn into turnovers with Houston? I think that general, assuming Houston does double, okay, if you're taking Kaufman-Wren's points away, who's making up for him? Yeah. And how much will Kelvin Sampson live with that? Because there is part of me that I would say, hey, let's let my 6'8", 230-pound dudes bang with Trey Kaufman-Wren and see if we can provide a little bit more resistance than McNeese and High Point did.
And also, to your point, getting the ball out of his hands a little bit. One of the things they're going to have to do, James, their shooting percentage is going to have to be higher, and they have got to hit the defensive end of the rebounds. They do those two things, I think they'll have a shot.
Miles Colvin, looking at you, buddy. Cam Heide, looking at you as well. They need them to have big games. I'm thinking of those double teams. Swing, as we say. Get an open look, got to knock it down to kind of offset some of the pressure, because if you do make some outside shots, your other guys contributing, then maybe you do get a Trey Kaufman-Wren one-on-one post up where he has an advantage and he's a high-level scorer. He can get some things done. But I think if you start off in this game missing a lot of shots, it doesn't bode well for you overall. I mean, it doesn't help any team to miss shots, but you know what I mean? Like, it really allows their defense to just sink their teeth in to you all. And so I'm excited to see how this bench responds. And also, I mean, not to overlook it, Braden Smith hasn't looked like Braden Smith. The guy that I remember, he was breaking, Wolf's ankles at Michigan and hitting, pull-up threes and kind of controlling the offense that way. I know they lost the Michigan game, but you get the point. I think that he's going to be a much better player and look more like himself because, again, 8 turnovers, only 10 points, not really himself. So if they get first-team All-American Braden Smith, get a couple guys knocking down some shots, any given day, you can go out there and win a game. And it's just one game. That's the beauty of it. Like, if you ask me, is Purdue going to beat Houston in a 7-game series, I'd probably tell you no. But this isn't the NBA. We got to have one good game, one good game plan. I think they'll be prepared for it. It just all comes down to execution.
Houston has won 28 of 29. They have 4 losses on the year, and 3 of them were in overtime. So, I mean, they are.
So you're saying we're going to be up late night? On Friday already.
If you told Purdue fans right now you could sign up for overtime, I think Purdue fans would say, hell yeah.
I'll take that.
It is kind of a unique situation for Purdue on Friday night. When you are a top 4 seed annually, you don't have many of these opportunities. Like, Purdue has been such a consistent one of the top seeds in the tournament. If they were to win on Friday night, that'd be the first time they will have beaten a better seed in the tournament since the infamous Ryan Klein game against Tennessee in the Sweet 16 back in 2019. Now, again, they haven't had many of these. When you're a 1 or a 2 or a 3 seemingly every year, you don't get many of these chances. But as the 4 seed playing the 1 seed, and obviously no matter who Purdue would play in the Elite 8, it'd be the same situation. So that is another opportunity for them on Friday night, is to obviously continue their season but beat a better seed. And we haven't seen them in many of these situations here throughout their recent tournament history.
Don't you think the basketball gods need Purdue and Tennessee in the Elite 8? Isn't that what we should have anyway?
Look,
at Lucas Oil, come on.
I've said this all the time.
Come on.
God is the biggest bandwagon fan of all time. That man does not care about your feelings, the storylines, whatever. I mean, I think of certain teams where they just have had heartbreak after heartbreak, and I'm like, God does not care. Like the Bills going to 4 straight Super Bowls and never winning one. Like, God was just being cruel. So you asked the question, Jeff. Yes, I would like to think that.
So
but
lightning should have struck
just
on Kelvin Sampson a little bit earlier.
I know.
A little bit earlier.
Exactly. Like, in the whole like cheaters never prosper thing. I don't know. Kelvin Sampson looks to be prospering pretty well at Houston right now. So I just don't buy it.
New England Patriots won a lot for their cheating ways.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Don't think the football gods were looking down on them.
It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. There will be entertaining basketball in this city all week long, starting with the Lakers and the Pacers tonight. And then Friday night, you've got the first couple of games of the Sweet 16 over there at Lucas Oil. And then on Saturday night, you've got all 4 high school state championship games. This is what we do in Indiana. This week here is what we do.
Can I just say it's so cool that here in Indiana, if you get to the state championship, you're playing at the Colts Stadium and you're playing at the Pacers Arena. Like, that doesn't happen in Illinois where I'm from, and so I can only imagine how cool that was. Actually, I did play a high school game on the floor at the United Center. I don't know how the heck we pulled that off because we were not a good program at all, but we got a chance to play there. And it was such a cool experience, being in the locker room, all those things. So I'm glad that those kids will get that experience this weekend and you get a chance to, extra name in history.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. Kylan, you think 8:30 for Tony Adragna. That's going to be what we're going to shoot for here.
She's
15
been
minutes.
over there.
Let's go.
She's been over there with wire cutters and a flashlight coming out of. She's holding it between her teeth, looking underneath. It's all good.
Incredible
You fixed
effort.
it, right?
I know.
Reset the phones
Mark
here.
would never. He just break the mic and then put it back together like he does.
He puts a red tag on it and sends a note to engineering. Can you get to this at your earliest convenience? That's not fair to Mark. He's not even here.
Hey, look, I'm not a fair fighter. I'll kick a man while he's down. He ain't here to defend himself. Mark, I'm sorry, brother. I'm getting my licks in right now.
And James, I know you have set us up tomorrow with a former Darren DeVries player.
Yes, Roman Penn, who's currently playing overseas right now in Romania, I believe. He was a point guard at Drake, spent 4 years under Darren DeVries at Drake, so he'll have a lot to say about it. I believe he started almost 120 games for him in the MVC, so excited to talk to him tomorrow. Also catch up with what he's doing overseas. I knew he was playing overseas. I think he started in Belgium. Now he's in Romania, still chasing the dream on the basketball side. But yes, he should give us a lot of insight into Darren DeVries, who he is as a person, as well as a coach.
You talked about playing over there in Belgium and other places. You see the NBA wants to open an 8 or 10 team league in Europe. They initially went to some of the European programs and said, hey, you want to merge? And they're like, no. And so they're thinking of just putting 8 or 10 of their own teams over there in a European-style league.
I never know how to feel about these things. It's like
Wait, so it would be separate
from the NBA, right?
Originally, the NBA was like, hey, do you want to partner up with this? And they're not getting a lot of cooperation, apparently, on that. But this week when the NBA's
So this would be the NBA Europe.
Yeah. This week when the NBA's Board of Governors meets in New York, team owners will discuss a proposal to launch a new basketball league in Europe. Back in January, Adam Silver told reporters in Paris it was looking into the endeavor, would update its owners in March while basketball is popular in Europe. He said, quote, the commercial opportunity has not kept pace with the growth of the game. It's all about the Benjamins. Let's go get some of that European money.
Man, if you want to see the growth of the game, he's got to get to Newcastle for a semi-state, and then we can talk.
Yeah, that's what he needs to do.
That's what I'm saying. He's got to put his feet on the ground and come enjoy it. This is what he's got to do. He's got to go to Newcastle.
Greg Rakestraw taking on a tour of the Hall of Fame.
I'm telling you, he got to get with Greg, go to Newcastle for the morning session, go to Mancino's afterwards, get you a grinder, and then head over to Knightstown and go to the Hoosier Gym, shoot around there, donate while you can.
Stay at the penthouse of the Steve Alford Inn.
There you go. And then go back that night, and then we can talk about basketball and the pool we have here in Indiana. So,
Kevin, good thing I didn't take a sip of coffee right before you said that. That was good. Look at
I'm
you.
just saying, man, if he wants, I'll talk. I mean, me and Adam Silver, we're pretty tight like that, so I'll hit him up tonight.
Is he going to be there tonight?
He might, he might come through
know.
for LeBron, Haliburton, and, two of his Olympic champions representing the USA. I might have to, just swing by and let him know what's going on.
All right. It's time for the morning check down here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. KB, the Lakers are in town. They will be over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse for a 7:30 tip against the Indiana Pacers, who've won 5 games in a row. The Lakers have lost 3 games in a row, but it appears right now that everybody seems to be ready to go and play tonight. Is that what it's looking like?
Yeah, injury report-wise, nothing too alarming for either team. Both of these teams are on back-to-backs. Both of these teams are on travel back-to-back, so you never know. But this is a national television game. ESPN also will be on FanDuel, so you can still get Chris and Quinn and company if you would like. Again, 7:30 tip time. And the Lakers, not only have they lost 3 in a row, they are 3-7 in their last 10. I think they've lost those games by an average of 15 per game, really struggling on the defensive end of the floor. And they're still fighting for seeding. I know right now they're on the good side of the play-in situation, but still they're flirting with it a little bit here. So seems to be kind of a big one for the Lakers in terms of circling it on the calendar. And if you look at the Pacers down the stretch, they have a very easy schedule. There's not a lot of kind of playoff-like games.
Is it easy? Because they always play down to their competition and they stress you out.
Basically, they are not playing a bunch of teams you'll see in the postseason.
Yeah, that's true.
And again, I think Cleveland will be probably resting at least in one of those 2 games late in the year. I know they've struggled here recently. So 7:30 tonight, Pacers and Lakers, and then off to take on the lowly Wizards tomorrow.
You can always hear that game right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan with Mark Boyle. And Pat Boylan will have the pregame beginning at 7. And I'm just curious, Kylan, we're sending you over there tonight. Are you more likely to heckle LeBron or J.J. Redick when it's all said and done?
All right. Is it true this is LeBron's last last season.
Well, every year
is
is his
it?
last
At
season.
this point, it could be. He's 40. So
I mean, right? I wouldn't be heckling. I'd be trying to get a little selfie or something. I get
Okay.
like a little
ain't
high
nobody trying to hear
five
that
or
this
something.
morning on the
All
airwaves. Colin.
Okay.
You guys gotta give him the hate.
Kylan wearing
The
a
Pacers is
purple
gonna
and
be
gold tonight in there. That's the problem with the
Just-
Pacers
Be ready for
geographically.
Did you accept those tickets yet?
I did, yes. Yeah, we're right there.
She's
I gotta go say what's up to Colin. I'll be there for our media purposes, hoping to talk to obviously Carlisle and crew after the game and potentially a win for the Pacers. But yeah, we'll see. I have a feeling, Colin, that if this is LeBron's last game in Indiana or Indianapolis, they want them to lose and they want to send them off the right way, which is with an L. We'll see what happens.
I will be wearing my gold for both of my Kings, Haliburton and Jalen.
That is not how this works.
All right. Also tonight in the NBA, the Milwaukee Bucks start the evening 2 games behind the Pacers for that 4th spot in the Eastern Conference. They're in Denver to take on the Nuggets a little bit later, but tough news, KB. They will do it without Damian Lillard.
Yeah, just awful news, really. Sustained a blood clot in his right calf. The Bucks announced that late last night. He's already on blood thinning medication, and they said that it stabilized the clot, but he will be out indefinitely. You know, I think when we've seen this pop up from an athletic standpoint, oftentimes it's been the end of seasons with players, no matter their age. So, you know, Lillard's statement, you know, had a lot of, you know, family in there, be there for his kids, you know, et cetera, et cetera. He did mention, I'm looking forward to continuing my career, but, you know, if you want to spin it into, okay, what does that mean for the rest of this season and the Pacers in the playoffs? Obviously, you could have some huge implications here if indeed he is going to miss the rest of the season. So just awful news because I thought Lillard had a really healthy season and, you know, had some big moments. So certainly you wish the best for him, but from a Pacers standpoint, this helps him out from a standings.
NFL notes yesterday at quarterback. The New York Giants have a duo now of Jameis Winston, and they just picked up on a 1-year deal Russell Wilson. JB.
The pregame prayers will be powerful. All right, if you want to go get saved, you want to meet Jesus, you just got to stand around the huddle for the Giants. They'll need some prayer,
2 different
too.
types of preachers.
2 different types of press conferences afterwards,
This is
too.
true. This is true. Jameis is more of like the soulful. He's like what I grew up on. Where
He's
they go,
got fire coming out of
like,
his...
you know, Jesus, you know, got to get saved. These Giants, and then I think Russell's
He's your
more
holiday
like,
preacher,
Yeah,
Jameis.
I think
Russell's
Russell's
your
more
52
like
weeks out of the year.
Yeah,
preacher.
he's like the youth pastor. You know, he's like hip and cool, trying to be hip and cool, but he maybe might not be anymore. So we'll see.
New England Patriots also pick up wide receiver Stephon Diggs on a pretty good-sized deal for him coming off an injury.
Yeah, I mean, good for him. I never see the guaranteed money for these guys. I'm always happy for him to get paid, but he was what I believe the Colts will try to do for whatever quarterback starting for them with just getting someone who can help you move the chains. Stephon Diggs, one of the best short area wide receivers in the game. And so for the Colts' perspective, they don't need any more wide receivers, I don't think. They need that tight end to help move the chains.
Coming up in just a moment, we'll talk IU hoops. Tony Adragna stops by to give us the latest on the brand new man in charge down in Bloomington. It comes your way next at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Josh covers the Boilers for Gold and Black, about their Sweet 16 matchup coming up late tonight, or I should say late on Friday, 10:09, the approximate tip time, keyword approximate there on that. But let's head to what I think is the fixed Payless Liquors hotline right now. And Tony Adragna joins us here to talk a little Darren DeVries and the new coach there in Bloomington. Tony, apologies for the phone issues. I hope you can hear me, and I hope you will respond.
No worries. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. God bless Kylan for making those work. Maybe indicative of where the IU program has been at, our phones here, over the last X amount of years. Tony, let's just start here pretty basic, although you went very in-depth in Darren DeVries in the film room session that you did. But what do you like about Darren DeVries and the success that he's had at Drake and the 1 year at West Virginia, just from a broad standpoint, the pros, I guess, of the hire?
Sure, yeah. One thing I think you hear a lot about him and just talking to people that have been around him, more than just the last week is just like the dude just wants to coach ball. He's diehard, just I think one of the words people used was a grinder. And that's just something that resonates with Indiana fans, right? Like right, wrong, or indifferent. Like that's the type of dude that Indiana fans will resonate with. And, Mike Woodson, it's kind of like the opposite of that. And so not that Mike Woodson didn't try hard, he didn't want to win. Obviously he did, but he had a unique recruiting style where he kind of wanted to be the closer, let his assistants go out, forge relationships, where that's just not going to be the case with DeVries. So he's going to go out on the recruiting trail. He's going to make relationships. He's already been in the last week, he's already called a lot of what you call key players in the state, top AAU programs, top Indiana high school basketball coaches. He's connected with the Indiana Basketball Coaches Association. So he's playing all the right cards to start to try to forge those relationships to where, you don't lose out on a Braylon Mullins or a Jalen Harrelson moving forward at the Indiana program. So I think those are some of the biggest things in terms of just like who he is as a person. I think the way that he coaches the game and his teams play is exciting. They want to get out and run a little bit. They open the floor up. They shoot a lot of threes. Those are all like that should be just kind of normal, but those are all things that Indiana fans haven't seen really since the Tom Crean era. Archie Miller and Mike Woodson really kind of like to play back to the basket, post up basketball, where this is going to be a lot different from that. So I think Indiana fans are really going to enjoy his style of play, just kind of who he is as a person and how he operates, especially on the recruiting trail and things like that. Like, I think Indiana fans will really enjoy that.
Okay, and then on the flip side, questions you would have about him taking the job, given the resume.
Yeah, I mean, technically hasn't won a game in the NCAA tournament. They won a play-in game at Drake, so I guess you could count that. But has never made it past first round, I guess I should say. Only 1 year of Power 5, Power 4, Power 2, however you call it, define that anymore, experience. That's obviously something that he's not proven. Some of the big names that IU seemingly went after, in the Brad Stevens and, the Ulterbergers and those guys and Scott Drew, like obviously they're proven to win at the highest level, and DeVries hasn't. Now, with that said, he took a West Virginia team that really didn't have a ton of talent, and all indications are that, they should have made the NCAA tournament, and that was after losing his top two scorers as well. So he adjusts to his personnel. He really he's kind of an offensive-minded coach, looking at his resume. But at West Virginia, he kind of knew, hey, we don't have a ton of offensive talent once his son went down, and so they really turned into just a defensive juggernaut. I think they were top 15 in the country in defensive efficiency. And so that lends itself to the guy's willing to adjust. He's able to adjust. He won, in the Big 12, won some big games. Obviously didn't make the NCAA tournament. In my personal opinion, they got snubbed. But yeah, there's obviously hesitations there, in that he wasn't this big gun hire. And then he's somebody that has kind of worked their way up the ranks, and this is like his big test now.
Tony, you talked about recruiting and him already kind of getting out there and trying to put his name out there for his IU program. But when it comes to Darren DeVries, I'm curious to know, do you have any tips for him in recruiting his son? or how that goes as far as trying to get Tucker DeVries to come to IU? And on a more serious note, how do you think he could fit into what they're trying to build at IU with this new regime?
Yeah, Tucker is a great player. I mean, he's fantastic in how he plays the game. He's like a modern four, so he's going to stretch the floor. He's able to set screens. He's about 6'7". He's got some weight on him. He can throw that weight around in the post a little bit if they try to put a smaller guy on him. And he's a tough cover. The way that DeVries uses him in the offense, he sets a lot of screens. So then the guy guarding him has to factor that in, but then he's running off a screen after that. So he uses him very well, and he's a great building block. That's somebody that has won or proven at all levels that he can put the ball in the basket. And so when you've got that coming with you, it's basically a complete starting over, complete rebuild, which obviously isn't as uncommon as it once was. But when that's kind of your foundational piece, somebody that's a fifth-year guy or fourth-year guy, whatever he is, I don't understand eligibility rules anymore in college hoops, but that's an awesome piece to build around. And that's somebody that, like, when you're going out, let's say you're recruiting a point guard, you're like, look, like, you've got this guy that's got gravity on the floor. He's going to pull defenses away from you, and then you can get to the rim. We open the things up because he's a small ball four. Like, those are things that you can also recruit to when you're recruiting other guys, as IU's obviously going to have to do to really get in the portal here to try to build their team.
Tony Adragna joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Jeff Rickard here. And Tony, all those things that you talk about, and now this brand new wild, wild west that we seem to be entering. We had Tom Crean that got him to a couple of Sweet 16s, and then there was going to be better than that, and Archie Miller didn't work out. So they were going to go back to a family guy and make that work, and Mike Woodson didn't completely work out. Why will this one be different, do you think?
Yeah, that's the $1 million, $5 million question, whatever it is, right? Yeah, I think that he's got – so Archie Miller, seemingly didn't really want the Indiana job. His brother kind of said, like, dude, if Indiana's offering, you got to take this thing, right? And so was never really comfortable in what, people would define as the fishbowl environment where everybody's kind of – all eyes are on you and the fan base's emotions – go with the highs and the lows, and you kind of got to take that. You got to know that. You got to have tough skin a little bit when you're coaching Indiana. So Archie Miller, never really was comfortable in that position. Then Mike Woodson, he was kind of behind the eight ball, right? Had never coached college basketball, was coming into a college basketball landscape that was unlike anything we'd seen before, and never really seemed to adjust completely to the college game and how it operates. And, in the NBA, like in the off season, you're just going golfing and having fun. And like college basketball off season, there isn't one. Like you're out recruiting, you're on the trail constantly, you're on the phones. And like for somebody that was coming into the job in their 60s, like that's a complete life change. And, so Woodson never really got comfortable in that. Whereas Darren DeVries is somebody that's come up in the college game. He was a GA at Creighton and was at Creighton for 20 years. Got his head coaching start at Drake and then to West Virginia. So he's somebody that's grinded away in the college game, understands that aspect. But to me, the biggest thing in the not only in the style of play between he and Archie Miller, but he wants this job. He wants this spot. Like don't make no question about it. Like West Virginia is a really good job. And, they've got a lot of support. They're like the professional team in West Virginia. So everybody, it's kind of all eyes on them. And he was willing to leave that job after 1 year to take this Indiana job. And that's not something that's super common. There's not a lot of guys that are leaving a good job after 1 year to take a better job in their estimation. So to me, that indicates he understands the magnitude of this job, what it's going to take, and he's embracing that. And that, to me, is why I think there's a big difference between what we've seen the last couple of years, or last decade, and then what we're going to see with Darren DeVries. Now, obviously, there's no guarantee here. He said as much. Like, look, like we're going to be process-oriented. We're going to work day in, day out, and we hope that the results come from that. It's interesting. There's a lot of parallels in the way that he speaks about basketball and how Sig speaks about football. And I think that's kind of got Indiana fans fired up as well, is that, obviously Sig had a ton of success in football. This guy's saying a lot of the same things, same buzzwords. And so I think it has people excited for what's to come in Bloomington.
You can follow Tony's work on Twitter at Coach Adragna. That is Adragna. Tony led us to a big-time media team victory back in 20. Was Jim Cruz our coach, Tony Adragna?
That was fantastic. That was a lot of fun. That was like the all-star cast of IU Sports Media. We had like Trisha Whitaker was on the team, Courtney Cronin, Ken Bykoff. I mean,
can you give me a Kevin Bowen scouting report?
No, boy. I first off, I can give a Tony Adragna one. That is a lefty that if you don't get out on him, that man is going to hit some buckets in your face. And he can drive as well. Southport's finest, Tony Adragna.
How about KB?
Yeah, Southport's finest, something like that. But yeah, Kevin can knock him down. We were pretty fortunate in that we were all basically student media, and so we definitely had the conditioning factor on our side as well. But yeah, Kevin could knock him down. He was solid for us.
Tony, thanks for faking that.
I was about to say solid. I hear solid and motor, and I'm like, oh, that means he tried hard. I don't know about.
You he could knock him down.
I'll be Venmoing Tony here after the interview because we've kept him on way too long on this Wednesday morning. I do want to end with this, Tony. It's not usually a question you ask in today's college basketball landscape of like, who would you like to retain on your roster with the new coach? But do you see anybody like on last year's team that, again, there's not many left, but is there anybody that you think Darren DeVries should try and want to re-recruit to stay in Bloomington?
I think Miles Rice is one that you could foresee like would fit in this system. So, last year he had Javon Small at West Virginia, who's an Indiana native as well, but he kind of has that dog mentality where he's going to get downhill, he's going to get to the rim, he's going to make the right plays, he's in a lot of ball screens. Like Miles Rice could be that guy, but defensively is where I would have some questions. As I noted, West Virginia was really, really solid on the defensive end last year, and your point guard's kind of the head of the snake there, right? And so with Miles Rice, I don't know that he could play that role defensively. Now, he's not in the portal yet, so obviously it seems as though DeVries is at least going to have conversations with, I think there's only 3 that aren't in the portal. I think Carlisle, Rice, and Bryson Tucker. But, if it's a full reset, I'm fine with that too. There's obviously was just a lot going on these last couple of years in Bloomington, and if DeVries or even the players feel like, look, I just need a new start, that makes a lot of sense too. Especially with Rice. His coach at Washington State's now at Stanford. Seems like that could be a good fit for him to kind of go back out west and reunite with a coach that he had a lot of success with at Washington State. So if they do a full reset, it makes a lot of sense to me. As a coach, that's a lot of recruiting you got to do in a short amount of time. And he even mentioned like when you're recruiting in the portal, like you've got 2 weeks tops to do background on a lot of these guys, and so you're trying to make great decisions on personnel while also only having like half the story. And so sometimes that could lend itself to culture or locker room issues or whatever if you get guys that just don't fit together. So I know that's probably causing some consternation with DeVries because he's having to restart. But he did it at West Virginia last year. He put a team together. Obviously the kind of the elephant in the room is Indiana's got great NIL, great rev sharing. And so they should be able to compete with the big dogs for some of these players. I know a lot of IU fans are a little concerned right now because, their name's not attached to many guys in the portal. It's like, well, hopefully they're waiting for guys to go in the portal that are still playing, that have a little bit of winning to their background and stuff like that. So with all that said, if going back to your original question, I don't really foresee anybody coming back. I think everybody just needs a fresh start, but if they do, great. And I think that means DeVries feels those guys fit in a way that fits his system, and all support's behind him. If he feels that way, obviously, then keep it going.
Right, check out Tony's work. Certainly, you can nerd out over a great film breakdown on Darren DeVries and what he's going to bring to Bloomington. Again, that is at Coach Adragna on Twitter. Tony, thanks for bearing with us this morning, and best to you and the fam.
Appreciate that, guys.
That's Tony Adragna right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. It's a big one, probably the most marquee road game, or I should say home game of the year for the Pacers. Secondary ticket market would certainly indicate that. We'll talk more about Pacers and Lakers on the other side.
Coming up on 9 o'clock here on the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. It'll be the Lakers and the Pacers tonight, 7:30. You can watch the crew with our guys, as I like to call them, Cristaneri and Quinn and everybody else, JJ. Or you can also watch the ESPN broadcast just to kind of see what the national narrative is right now. But I would think that the national narrative for Indiana is they've won a lot of basketball games lately, and Tyrese Haliburton is playing out of his mind, Kevin. That's what it should be.
Video game numbers since the All-Star break, I mean, it's absurd. It's like 140-something assists to 13 turnovers. And, again, he's also averaging 20 a game on top of it. It's just stuff you can't take for granted, and it's why he earned that $200 million contract, and I think certainly he looks much healthier than he did at the start of the season. Secondary ticket market, I'm seeing the cheapest ticket to get in the building tonight, $113.
And that's to sit.
James is going to buy 2 of those, right?
And I ain't got it like that.
That is to sit and pull the rope that Boomer rappels on, right?
I was going to say that's to sit next to God. That's how I look at it.
You, the catwalk, and God all up there. So it's got to be the most expensive ticket of the year, right?
Probably, I would think. I mean,
you get the combo of Luka and LeBron?
Yeah, definitely. But I would say just from, I don't know, ticket prices, but like just fandom, whenever I covered the Pacers like heavily, the biggest turnouts were Steph, LeBron, and even like I would throw Ja in there.
Mm-hmm.
The kids love Ja Morant. Like it is unbelievable.
I think Anthony Edwards is climbing on that list.
Yeah,
I know
but Steph and LeBron are the two that just, I mean, those two make everyone else in the NBA seem not famous.
Well, I've always said this too about the Pacers. I mentioned like geographically, think about the NBA landscape. No team in Cincinnati, no team in Louisville, no team in St. Louis. So if you are a NBA fan or a specific player fan of any of those players that you just mentioned, James, and you live in those 3 cities, the closest NBA game you're getting to is here.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the West versus the East and LeBron and Ja and Steph and Luka being out in the West, you only see them one time a year, even Victor Wembanyama.
Yep.
Of course, those games are in Paris. That's why I think oftentimes you see like a Pacers home game be such a heavy individual road environment with some of the, like when LeBron and Luka hit a shot tonight, the cheer is going to be rather loud.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of it, I think, just
but
has
if they
to
take that L.
Well, late in the game, it is different. Late in the game, it is certainly different. But early on, there will be some loud individual cheers.
For sure.
But, yeah, I'm looking forward to tonight because I think the Lakers should have a lot of urgency as well with how they've played here.
They need to get going
recently. So I'm looking forward to the game tonight.
7 o'clock airtime. Pat Boyle will have the pregame for you. Then, of course, Mark Boyle will have the play-by-play. Eddie Gill will be alongside, and that one tips off at 7:30. You're going to be there, James. I may or may not be there. I've got kid duty tonight, so we'll see what happens.
I mean,
they're old enough. I can leave them on their own.
Y'all talking about me paying for some tickets. You got it. You got it. I mean, I have one media pass. Thank goodness for being a writer.
When do you start leaving your kids at home? Like, and they're good to fend for themselves.
I can do that now. They're 15 and 17. I feel okay for a couple of hours.
Couple hours.
Oh, you're not trusting more than that.
My parents was gone.
It's a different.
I'm about to go judge my parents after this show and be like, you know what?
Biggest party bust in Carmel history tonight. If you go to the Pacer game,
can I ask this? Have you ever lost your kids? Because my parents always say like, that's like a rite of passage. Seriously, they lost me in the mall for like 20 minutes. And they found me running around some like what is it? Like a store, I believe, or it was a water fountain.
So the closest was many years ago. I think they were like 4 and 5 maybe. And we were telling them to get ready to go somewhere, and without either one of us looking, they went and got in the back of the SUV and were sitting in the back. You couldn't really see them through the windows. And all of a sudden, we're ready to go. And like, where are the kids? Go downstairs. They're not there. They're in their room. They're not there. They're in the backyard. They're not there. Treehouse. They're not there. All of a sudden, it goes from, hey, guys, to guys, what's going on? So finally, my wife and I are now scouring the neighborhood. We've got the neighbors out looking as well in their cars. Everybody's looking for the kids. We didn't realize they were sitting in the back of the car waiting for us. It was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Longest 20 minutes of my life.
Yeah, the good news is a couple times that I've not been able to place Max for a minute or two. He's so damn loud that all you do is just yell his name once, and he will certainly yell back in a very emphatic way. So we haven't had the big scare yet.
I hope you don't have it. My mom used to say she would get mad at me because apparently I didn't cry much as a baby, but I wouldn't go to sleep. So I'd be on her lap just looking around. She was like, and I'd try to go to sleep, and you just looking. Like, looking at what? You just looking around? I'm like, how you going to get mad at a baby for looking?
I've been
I'm not
there
even
too.
crying. I'm just looking. So
I agree with you, Mom. I honestly think that's more maddening. It's like, do one or the other. Don't just be stoic.
Have you ever taken the kid, put him in the backseat, and driven him around to put him to sleep?
I've done, and people think I'm psycho for this. Luckily, our kids were born in kind of warm months. I've done like the 3 a.m. I'm putting you in the stroller and taking you around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
You'll do anything to get a kid to fall asleep. And to your mom's point, I
Anything.
remember driving my youngest around for like 45 minutes one night because it always put him to sleep. And then we came up to a stoplight, and the overhead street light lit up the back seat. So I looked in the rearview mirror, and he's just looking all around, bright and alert and ready to go. No problem.
Do you guys ever sing to get your babies to sleep?
I mean,
Are you
well,
singers and all?
This is a question
So
more so for
scare
them.
those kids. What are you talking about?
Singing is a very
We don't want to scare them. We want to put
No
them to sleep.
lullabies? What kind of childhood is this?
I am attempting to do something along those lines, but if you heard me, Kylan, you would think
Yeah.
it's the most appalling
I mean,
singing
Maybe
that
less lullaby.
You don't want
that you've
Yeah,
that
you
you've
don't
ever
want me
I
singing.
mean, one last
anybody to
quick
sleep.
story. My mom actually went to my grandma. She was like concerned that I wouldn't smile, and she like literally went to my grandma crying. It was like, my baby won't smile, because apparently I didn't smile a lot as a kid, and my grandma just died laughing. She's dealt with kids. She's worked with kids her entire life. She's been an educator her entire life. She was like, he'll smile when he gets ready. And so I guess I smile a lot now, and my mom says I don't take things serious enough, and I just float through life. But yeah, I guess I was just like not smiling and looking around. Young James, man, I had a lot of deep thoughts in my mind, man. I was thinking of Dino Nuggets years in advance.
He's going to share those thoughts with us next on
Here we go.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan as we get ready for the Lakers to come to town tonight. represent the Fan Morning Show.
And
If you want to be on these airwaves tomorrow,
It's got to be some innocent heckling going on.
all right. So let me give you a breakdown, Colin, of how this works. So as a young, naive Illinois transplant, I got here, and I was a little too high on LeBron, a little too high on trolling IU, and they did not forget. It took years to rebuild the brand. So I would just advise you, if you are going to, dabble in some LeBron stuff, keep it light and minimal, and just know that Pacers fans will rightfully try to chew you out if they lose.
Just want you to go have a good time.
I want
Have
you to
fun.
protect it out here, okay?
a good time will be had.
There you go.
That is
All right.
for sure.
I get the feeling, I kind of feel like the good time is going to be had by all Pacers fans. Lakers have been struggling. I know that both teams seem to have everybody available for tonight. Does this take on a playoff-like feel in some ways tonight, Kevin?
I could see that, yeah. If you just look at, I guess, Vegas, they think it's going to be a close game. Pacers are a slight favorite in that one. But, I would think, anytime you're playing LeBron and Luka, I think there's an element of you circled on the calendar. I know, Luka and Rick Carlisle have had an interesting relationship, is probably one way to put it, over the years. So I would say Luka probably circles this on the calendar as well. I could definitely see that sort of atmosphere tonight. Again, not a ton of marquee home games the rest of the year. So, I think so. I mean, ESPN's in the building, et cetera, et cetera.
It feels big. It kind of feels big tonight.
Obviously, last time you had national TV was what? That was the Haliburton game, if I'm not mistaken. The Haliburton shot with Reggie Miller and Brian Anderson courtside.
Floating down into the corner as he shot. Yeah.
So, I could see that sort of atmosphere in the building when you think about it, LeBron, I don't know if it's still true now that he's been in the Western Conference, but I feel like when he was in the East, certainly there was no team he had played more in his career than Indiana. When you add up all the playoff games and obviously Cleveland days of being in the same division. So, I can see that.
When you say that, I just think of years of developed hate for that man and that team. So it should be fun. Like I say, controlled hate is the best thing about sports.
Sports hate. Yeah.
Gotta love it.
From a matchup perspective, what do you expect the Pacers to lean on here tonight?
I want to see Benedict Mathurin. It's no secret that Luka Doncic can't defend that well. And so if you ever get matched up against him, that is barbecue chicken. You go kill him one-on-one. So I think that Benedict Mathurin will be key to this game, his downhill scoring, putting pressure on the Lakers. And for the Pacers, defensively, I think a lot of it has to do with making sure that you're not over-helping, to a certain degree, because we know that they have playmakers over there, so you don't want to let other guys get hot if you're helping too much off Luka, too much off LeBron. It looks like as of late, Luka's put up some big numbers in these last few games. They've lost because no one else has done anything.
Lakers can't guard.
Mm-hmm.
No,
defense has been their issue.
That's true.
They just flat out, they can't guard anybody. They've getting blown out in so many of these games. So,
Benedict Mathurin game incoming.
The Pacers stressing that, and with Haliburton quarterbacking it, I've got no issues thinking that they won't be able to do that.
Also, get your lick back on Austin Reeves. You dropped 45 on you last time you played. My goodness.
Yeah, again, you lost out there without LeBron and Luka back, whenever that was, probably about a month ago at this point. I want to go back to that Colts conversation we had earlier. James, I know you watched the behind the scenes video that the Colts put out.
Can I say you got some cameos in there? Hugh,
last night.
JMV. I was like, okay, I heard your voice in there, KB.
Oh, little audio.
Yeah. He's being bashful, y'all. He was the star of the whole thing.
Overplayed. No, I think Cam Bynum takes the cake for.
I think they opened it with a JMV line though. I was like, wow, okay. Shout out to 107.5 The Fan
for being the star there, but. They started with a lot of the Chris Ballard season-ending press conference clips, and when you hear those back, obviously they are strong, they are filled with emotion. I would argue a lot of those words have been backed up through action here, but I was reminded of Chris Ballard said something to the effect of, "We need more uncomfortability on the roster," and he stressed that on multiple occasions, saying we don't have enough stress and competition creates stress. So, James, as we sit here on March 26th, where on the roster has gotten more uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable is an interesting word because I think they've gotten better at safety and cornerback. I would say cornerback, you're uncomfortable because, Juju Brents, this time last year, you're looking at potentially being a starter, and now it's like you're not. I think Jalen Jones is probably the third starting cornerback on this roster, and so maybe you're uncomfortable there. More competition for him, Sam Womack. I would not say you're more uncomfortable at the safety spot because you just swapped them out. Julian Blackmon's gone. You bring Cam Bynum in. And maybe I can use it in a less tangible way and say it's uncomfortable in the sense of you're bringing in guys who've won. And so if you haven't won and you speak on things and how your standard is, but Javarius Ward says, nah, this is how we should do it, who are you to kind of tell him any different? You know what I mean? He's played 17 playoff games, started in 3 Super Bowls. So I think from that aspect, you're probably a little bit more uncomfortable because, you're bringing in guys who have won, who've had success, and could tell you, yeah, whatever you claim to have had, whatever success you've claimed to have had, Kenny Moore, yeah, we know you're the top dog here, not anymore. That's me. So maybe that's a part of it.
Yeah, I think another word you could use, obviously, better. Where have you gotten better? And you just laid out, I think in the secondary, you would sit here and say you've gotten better there. Honestly, the only other position on the roster I would say that about, uncomfortable, better, however you want to slice it, is kicker. As dumb as that sounds.
Yeah, excluding quarterback, we know the situation there.
Yeah, I guess it's a more uncomfortable a little bit there, but I can't argue you've gotten better there.
No.
So I guess I bring all that up to say, do they make another move or two additionally here in these later waves of free agency and the draft, obviously? Because, when you look at the O-line, I would say there's more questions than answers. Defensive line, I would say that as well. I think linebacker has a little bit of uncertainty. So that general premise, they certainly addressed in the secondary. There's no denying that. They addressed that in a significant manner. But as we sit here on March 26th, there really isn't a lot of other areas I point to on the roster where I can say that about, like in a very confident manner. And again, April's wave of free agency, you could still have guys cut post-draft. Stephon Gilmore was a little bit of a later in the offseason move. But, I was kind of reminded of that watching the behind-the-scenes video last night of, Chris Ballard really, really emphasized that. We need to create more uncomfortability across our roster. Okay, when I think about that right now, uncomfortability and or better, certainly the secondary. And then again, in all seriousness, kicker. But outside of that, boy, I don't know if I say that about many other spots.
So let me ask you this. When you look at what may be available in that second wave and knowing that the Colts are probably going to look to the draft for either tight end or defensive line probably right up front, who's out there that it really intrigues you that you'd like to see brought in?
Well, I still think you got to go back to the trenches. And I would say defensive end, interior defensive line. Dayo Odeyingbo did play the most snaps of any defensive lineman on your team last season. So replacing him, I don't think is going to be just some one-for-one situation. Is it really Samson Ebukam coming off the torn Achilles going to be eating up all those snaps at the age of 30? And when you look at it, to me, there's not a lot left from a D-line free agency standpoint. And again, offensive line, I thought Kevin Zeitler, who signed with the Titans, I thought he could have been a guard option. I know some people had asked me about Mekhi Becton, former Eagle. I think he was with maybe signed with the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken. So those sorts of players, is it just strictly you're going to go to the draft? Because like a guy like A.D. Mitchell, did he create an uncomfortable moment for Alec Pierce? Certainly. But it seems like right now, most of your eggs are in that draft basket. Certainly tight end, to your point, Jeff. You're going to, I'd be stunned if they got to round 4 of the draft and did draft a tight end. Frankly, I feel like I'd feel that about round 3. But I don't know. I just, those were a lot of big words from Chris Ballard in January. And again, the secondary certainly has it. But I'm struggling to find other areas of the roster that has it as of now.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I know you're big on the competition, but what other moves realistically do you think should have or could have been made? Mainly because I'm just looking at how much money was spent in the secondary. And once those 2 splashes were made, I was like, all right, well, that kind of answers the question.
What do they have left? Is it north of 20? Is it around 20?
I believe so. But even then, I just get the sense that they're probably going to just dibble and dabble when it comes to free agency, a lot of one-year deals if they do sign some other people. And then you got to factor in, you do have to pay the rookie class in theory.
$21 million
so
in cap. People have brought up extensions. There's a little bit of like, boy, do you just kind of at some point say, guys, we're in our worst playoff drought in 30-some years. Are we really just handing out extensions like that.
I can make the argument for, I think, Bernard Ryman.
Yeah, Ryman is probably the one. You and I talked about Alec Pierce. I'm just not in that camp. I just don't think 1 year of you has earned that. I get that you might regret that down the road, but I think you need to live in a very present view of 2025.
Okay.
And making sure that you've got enough for this season. So that's probably a little bit of the stance. Hey, $21 million. I mean, you can do a lot with that, frankly.
I'll give you an example. Defensive edge rushers right now. I picked that position because why not? Matthew Judon's available. He made $13 million last year. Von Miller's still available. He made $20 last year. Preston Smith made $13 last year. Zadarius Smith made $11.5. And then you go to DeMarcus Walker, who made $7 with the Bears. How much money are you willing to spend if you bring in somebody on the interior line?
I think if you get to the draft and, you're kind of around 10-ish million, you're still in a pretty healthy spot. I mean, they could still restructure some guys on their roster. James, you've brought up a name like Rodney Thomas before as a cap casualty guy. I mean, there are still avenues you could explore, not just the Braden Smith thing that they did, to open up more cap space. So, again, this sort of topic might not be as relevant in a month, but as we sit here right now, through the vast majority of free agency, the general premise of where is there more competition on the roster? You can make the argument Joe Flacco is more competition than Daniel Jones.
If he's still out there getting it done at his age, there are times that he
who is a better quarterback in the 2024 season, Flacco or Jones?
Flacco for the last 2 years, I would say.
So, again, when you're making the statement of, okay, we need to add more competition, we need it. Well, certainly in the secondary, you have a ton more competition, and you've upgraded, frankly. Kicker, in all seriousness, was Spencer Schrader. But outside of that, I don't know any other position group I can really say that about.
Good point. I would push back a little on Joe Flacco because it got spooky when he had to start. It started off.
Yeah, again,
it tanked really bad. And at that point,
Flacco and Jones, you can maybe flip a coin.
I probably take a 27-year-old who can probably run a little bit because, Jesus, it was bad. But I get your point. I do think that it'll be interesting to sort of relay this message or at least pick Ballard's brain at the NFL owners meetings, which are coming up here this weekend. I'll be in Palm Beach, Florida, and then I believe this upcoming Monday is when we'll talk to Shane Steichen as well as Chris Ballard, Juris Stillall, and Jim Irsay. Hope to talk to him as well. But we do know we'll be hearing from at the least the GM and the coach. And so I'm curious to to hear Chris Ballard sort of assess his own offseason to this point. Because remember, KB, when he was like, I'm very hard on myself. I evaluate myself. I've learned these lessons. And I believe it was you who kind of doubled back. KB talked about his kids and driving them around. He circled the block on those comments from Chris Ballard. Wait a second. You learned some lessons. What are they? And he talked about just having that humility to say, I was wrong and I messed up. And so I'm curious to see, one, do you think you've kind of remedied some of the mistakes you've made recently, and then how you continue to build sort of a new or revamped version of this roster, because we know the way you built it in the past hasn't worked?
And knowing Ballard, I think his answer will be it's still early. I think that would be his reaction to that overall question of, hey, where is there other competition on the roster? I think he will point to kind of his old adage of, hey, it's still early. Again, last offseason you operated really with no competition, no matter what month of the offseason it was. So it's a topic that I think, based off his words in that video last night, I was reminded of it. I'm like, yeah, wow, right now in late March, there really isn't a lot of other areas. And again, even when you look at tight end, the thought there is if you draft Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland at 14, it's not necessarily creating competition. It's simply just saying, here's the starting job. You are the guy that's going to be playing a whole lot for us there. So specifically kind of trenches, O-line and D-line is probably where I would look at it right now. And linebacker, I was disappointed in the linebacker play last year. And right now it's, I guess, Zaire Franklin and Jalen Carlisle.
Yeah.
I guess is your starting group.
And you got to build a 53-man roster. There's no way around that. But at the end of the day,
has EJ Speed been rumored anywhere?
I've not heard.
No, I've not seen much on that front, which leads me to believe, could they bring him back?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say bring him back in the same exact role. I think at that point I would probably lean more towards Jalen Carlisle because we've seen the EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin movie before. But he is a pretty good, solid depth piece if he's willing to accept that role on this team.
So all that stuff is really important. But at the end of the day, whether or not Chris Ballard succeeds or not probably still comes down to the quarterback play, right? At the end of the day, that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could definitely talk about that all day, every day. But until we actually see some reps and we see something new, we just don't know how it's going to go. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean you can't address other positions of need with your team. And I definitely think that whoever is starting at quarterback, get the guy tight end. I'm looking at the roster, and it is bleak as far as the tight end options. Drew Ogletree, Will Mallory are the two bigger names in that position, but neither one has shown they could be a number one option. Jelani Woods, he hasn't played in 2 years. Yeah. I mean, you got to get a new body in there and fresh blood.
I don't want to go too far, but I would almost be stunned if we got through round 1 and 2 of the draft and they haven't drafted a tight end.
I would definitely be stunned, yeah.
I think that's risky to commit to anything with Chris Ballard in regards to the draft with that sort of statement, but I do think I'm there. Like, I can't – boy, I'd be –
Here's one I'll throw out there for you. Would you trade for Dallas Goedert? Like, if it's a fourth-round pick, I know he's 30, played with Shane Steichen before in Philly. He's a proven commodity. Like, is that a possibility to kind of supplement your tight end needs?
And then not draft one in 1, 2, or 3?
Right.
I'd rather draft one.
Yeah, I think I'd rather draft one.
Okay. It's something that I've seen the fan base
I think it's
talk
kind
about.
of the rare draft class of like, wow, it's loaded at the position of need. And it's as loaded as like, people are not going to be ripping the Colts for taking Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland at 14.
I agree with that.
I mean, how many years do you have tight ends that are worth that type of
I was just thinking, if you're trying to win right now, do you go get that guy who's a proven commodity?
Certainly something that I would think about, but I'd probably opt for the draft.
All right, let's check it down. Light night tonight, but it includes the Pacers and the Los Angeles Lakers. They will have the spotlight to themselves. The Pacers have won 5 in a row. The Lakers have lost 3 games in a row. But, Kevin, it looks like just about everybody should be available for both teams tonight, right?
Yes, it'll be a back-to-back for both of these teams, but it sounds like from a health standpoint, LeBron and Luka good to go. We'll watch the final injury report here. Coming up, Pacer-wise, you don't have anybody of note there on that injury report. So, again, just a reminder, 7:30 tip is what you have there with the national TV game on ESPN. Obviously, you still have Chris, Quinn, and JJ. On the FanDuel side, if you do want to watch ESPN, you'll get Mark Jones and Doris Burke on the call for that one.
And you can always listen to it right here at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan with Mark Boyle on the play-by-play. Biggest key to this game tonight, JB, now that we've been talking about it all morning long, is what?
Don't let the superstars get going, but also they don't defend. So go at them, attack them, keep the flow going, and keep your pace going as well. And so I think that's very key for this team. But, yeah, don't let Luka and LeBron both go off. And I expect, Andrew Nembhard, they call him you put him in a Nembhard jail or whatever. We'll see if he can bounce back after Austin Reeves had his way with him the first matchup. I'm curious to see how he responds to whatever matchup he gets because he is playing at an all-NBA defensive level this season.
Pacers start tonight with a 2-game advantage over both Milwaukee and Detroit. Detroit is off tonight, but the Bucks play the Nuggets, and unfortunately they'll play tonight and probably for a good period of time without Damian Lillard, KB.
Yeah, out indefinitely was the announcement yesterday, and certainly anytime you're dealing with a blood clot, you think first about the human being and just the general health for Damian Lillard. Sustained a blood clot, right calf announced yesterday. Again, out indefinitely. The playoffs start in 3.5 weeks. Lillard's statement was filled with, priorities are to protect my health and safety. As much as I love basketball, I need to be there for my kids and family. So, was it Wembanyama had one in his shoulder?
Yes.
Earlier, yeah.
And he's shut down for the rest of the year.
And that was announced like a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, here in the out indefinitely, 3.5 weeks away from the playoffs.
Yeah, Brandon Ingram had one years ago, and he was out for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, so not good news on any level. Certainly best out there to Damian Lillard.
A couple of NFL notes. We saw Stephon Diggs sign a free agent contract with the New England Patriots yesterday, JB, and also Russell Wilson, another quarterback for the New York Giants. It'll be Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston battling for the number one spot up there, man.
Who has the better quarterback situation, Colts or Giants?
Ooh, good question.
Get back to me in October.
Better quarterback situation?
I'd probably take the
go
Colts.
I'd probably go Giants, honestly.
Would you?
Yeah, I think Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than anybody we've talked about.
Yeah, but these guys are at least young and have futures potentially.
Young, future, whatever. The better quarterback is in New York currently.
A couple other notes from me. Andrew Luck dealing with quite the bit of business across his desk right now as the Stanford GM. The firing of Troy Taylor for bullying allegations on more than one occasion. Pretty awkward time to be dealing with the hiring of a new head coach. Sounded like Luck was open to just an interim here for 2025 and then making a full coaching search next year. So we'll see how that plays out. Out on the farm, Richard Pitino in the same conference with his father. Xavier actually hires some dude that's not a retread of their own or a Butler guy. The 42-year-old. I was stunned to see that. Richard Pitino leaving New Mexico and going to take the Xavier job.
Coming up in just a moment, we turn our attention to the Purdue Boilermakers. They'll be playing in the Sweet 16 right around the block over there at Lucas Oil Stadium this weekend. We'll get you more info on that next as we continue on the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Practice for the Boilers, and then Friday nights, it is the Sweet 16. You'll have the same broadcast crew that you had opening rounds. Andrew Catalan, who I believe was on with John earlier this week. Approximate tip time of 10:09, a 7.5-point underdog. To talk more about this matchup, the man who covers Purdue better than anybody else, Brian Neubert from Gold and Black, is with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Brian, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Your biggest key as you look ahead to Friday night, you point more towards Braden Smith's recent play and the Houston guards. You point to Trey Kaufman-Renn and inevitably the doubles he's going to see from Houston, or totally something different?
Yeah, I think just probably poise all across the board. Houston's, from a defensive perspective, is unlike anything Purdue's seen all year long. It's like they've got 8 guys on the floor sometimes the way they play defense. You know, Purdue's going to have to take deep breaths here and there, be really smart, and just kind of make the right play and not try to do too much. And, you know, Braden Smith's going to have to get the ball out of his hands when he has to get the ball out of his hands. Everybody else is going to have to make plays, and they're just going to have to play their best game of the season to be able to beat these guys.
So, I mean, that's an easy task. Just play your best when you need it the most. But, Brian, one player that I've, just kept an eye on throughout the tournament, and really late in the season, I think has played well, is Miles Colvin. How do you think he'll factor into this game as a potential X factor?
Well, when a team pressures up top the way Houston's gonna, it's conceivable there might be some threes there in the corners for guys like Miles Colvin, Camden Heide, and things like that. Purdue's just got to push all the right buttons against Houston's initial surge to be able to get some of those open looks. But if they can get those open looks the way Miles Colvin and Camden Heide have been shooting the ball lately and playing all across the board, has been kind of their best basketball this season. That's been a good deal of Purdue's upside throughout this season, and it's starting to realize itself here at the right time.
Again, Brian Neubert with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline, Gold and Black, with his coverage. Brian, I think you asked, if I'm not mistaken, Matt Painter, one of you asked, Matt Painter on Saturday after the press conference about the transfer portal opening up, coming up on Monday. I thought it was a great question, and I thought Matt Painter's answer was pretty interesting. I guess let me start here. Did I read too much into it in that Purdue expects to be active in the portal coming up this offseason?
Yes, they will be looking for a big guy to try to help fill some of the gaps they've been overcoming schematically this season. Daniel Jacobson, the freshman, could have changed things had he not broken his leg in the second game of the season. But they've had to really, really overcome some things all season long. They're one of the least potent shot blocking teams in college basketball. Rebounding's been an issue for them all season long, where they've kind of had to overachieve. I think they would like to find a big guy who can help them next year cover some of that up in conjunction with getting Daniel Jacobson back. So it's not instead of Daniel Jacobson, it's with Daniel Jacobson next year. So they're going to look for some size in the portal, them and everybody else in the country. And then if they lose anyone to the transfer portal, and I think everybody in college basketball these days has to prepare themselves for the fact that there will be some guys on their roster who are going to look for opportunities to play more than they might be playing right now. They would have the leeway to replace those guys too. So, Purdue's going to have to be really active there to maximize their opportunity next year when, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Wren are seniors, presumably. I mean, I guess anything can happen, but I'm not anticipating anything happening. You have one of these silver bullet opportunities again, like you did last year, and you kind of owe it to your roster to do everything in your power to make that team as good as it possibly can be. I think there's a misnomer out there that Matt Painter's anti-portal. I think he's not going to build his program every year by recruiting a new team like a lot of people are doing. I don't think he's going to be looking for his best players every year on the transfer market, but he's absolutely positively going to be in situations here and there where he's going to have to supplement his returning core with some needed pieces. And I think this is absolutely one of those years where they're going to have to go out and find some guys. And they're probably going to lose some guys too. That's just kind of the nature of the beast nowadays. So yes, they're going to be very active in the portal, and it's a good problem to have that you're one of 16 teams left, but it is still kind of a hassle here. But there is no right answer for when the NCAA can do this. So 16 teams have to deal with this right now, and Purdue's one of them.
Brian Neubert, Gold and Black, does great work covering the Boilers. You might have just answered it right there, Brian. And there's a part of me that's like, gosh, are you really asking him this? But I don't know. I feel like I've heard like a little bit of like the internet rumors of, wow, could you see what Braden Smith could get in the portal at insert school that starts with a K here? I guess I assume if I've heard that question, then maybe you have heard that question. And again, I think you said you don't anticipate anything. A, have you heard the question? And B, is it your expectation that Braden Smith is back in West Lafayette for his final season?
Yes, I have heard the question, and I don't like platforming things that are crap, and a lot of that stuff is normally crap. I think that, yes, he and every other great player in the country can go out in the portal and get a ton of money. Yes, schools that start with a K and wear blue are offering people a lot of money while they're still playing for other teams. I think that's sort of the nature of the beast nowadays. No, I don't anticipate anything happening in that regard. I think he's turned down money before in his career from schools that wear blue and may or may not be called the Bulldogs. But I think that, he's at Purdue for a lot of reasons. And, Purdue was the school that kind of gave him the opportunity to become what he's become. And he's been very loyal to Purdue. Matt Painter has really, really done right by him. The coaching staff, P.J. Thompson, et cetera, have done right by him. And I think there's a lot of two-way loyalty there that is very rare in college basketball nowadays. And you also look at legacy and things like that. If you're the in-state player who, kind of burns down one of the most liked and respected coaches in college basketball after taking them to the Final Four, that's something that's probably got to be taken into consideration as well. I do not anticipate this anything coming of this. I try not to talk about this stuff publicly too much because it platforms things that are just internet rumor. But I do not anticipate anything happening in that regard. But you have to put an asterisk on everything in college basketball nowadays. You just never know. When you're talking about the sums of money out there that, in a couple of weeks will technically be illegal, or a couple of months, whenever the House case passes, there have been no rules for the last couple of years. And theoretically, in a couple of months, there will be rules. So I don't know how much bite those rules will have, but, hopefully for the well-being of college basketball, there will be some order to this here in a couple of months, but it is going to be a wild next couple of weeks here. So you never say never on anything, but I don't anticipate Purdue being adversely affected by this.
I appreciate you answering that question.
Brian Neubert joining us from Golden Black, getting ready for the Purdue Boilermakers to play in the Sweet 16 against Houston on Friday. We saw the charts running around social media all day yesterday, Brian, about there's only a few teams that have 3 or more of their starting 5 that have been with that school their entire careers going into the Sweet 16. And, of course, Purdue's at the top with all 5 starters having grown up and stayed with the program. How much of an advantage, if at all, will that be for Purdue in this situation?
Continuity should be a real advantage this time of year. But I think it was last year, and I think that's why you saw UConn and Purdue, as the best 2 teams in the country, and one of those rare years where you get the 2 best teams playing for the national title as you did last year. That said, continuity comes in a lot of forms, and when you have the continuity of Houston in terms of their ability to put together the same team every single year and play with an intensity and play with a system that works every single year, there's only so much that the fact that your guys have played 3 years together can do to help you in a situation like that, because Houston's really good. And, Duke is really good. And a lot of these teams left are really, really good. And continuity probably helped get you here, but it can only take you so far. And I think the fact that Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer have played 100 games together, and I think the fact that Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman Wren have played together as much as they have, and Miles Colvin and Camden Heide and Caleb First have all know each other so well and have played so much basketball together. That is a really big deal, but it can only take you so far, because at the end of the day, sometimes the team in front of you is just supremely talented or more physically gifted. And to a certain extent, this Purdue team has overachieved this year. As I mentioned earlier, they don't have the size they've always had, and they have had to play a little bit differently offensively with a smaller front court guy as opposed to a force of nature, whether it be Zach Edey or Travion Williams or Isaac Haas or any of the guys Purdue had prior. So they've been smaller. They've had to overachieve as a rebounding team. They've had to figure it out defensively from a schematic perspective to the point where they just have to keep the ball away from the rim, because once it gets to the rim, they have no rim protection whatsoever. And I think their continuity, their experience together has probably helped them when they've been at their best defensively, because that experience together has helped them be better as five guys on the floor defensively versus five individuals, where you could get away with that before because you had the Statue of Liberty standing in the lane. But I think that it has helped get Purdue to this point, but it can probably only take you so far from here.
One more from me, Brian. When you look at Braden Smith, the season he's had, first-team All-American, Big Ten Player of the Year, did you see this when he was recruited? I know he was a really good player, probably under-recruited, but I have been pleasantly surprised by the level in which he's been able to get to. Not saying I didn't think he was going to be a good player, but he's going to be, I would think, remembered as one of the all-time great Boilermakers.
Yeah, he's obviously the greatest point guard in Purdue history. He'll be probably the greatest guard in Purdue history. I can't speak to the 60s and 50s, nor do I think that's even fair to compare eras. But I've never seen a college point guard with his it factor. Certainly not at Purdue. I think he's got some things you're just born with from a point guard perspective. The way he can command games, the way he understands angles, and the way he sets up plays for other people. But I did not see this level of career coming. I have, been wrong before about guys Matt Painter's recruited, and this is kind of the one that, has convinced me to never really question him again, because I did see Braden Smith a lot in high school and in AU, and I thought there were some things there that were special, but I also saw some things that I thought he could do in high school that maybe wouldn't translate to the college level. I thought he over dribbled sometimes. I thought he left his feet too often. I think he was more athletic than a lot of people in high school, and that could get him out of tough situations that he wouldn't be able to get out of in college. And that stuff's materialized a little bit, but barely. And I think that all of his best has been amplified, and all of his worst has been minimized at Purdue. And there's been very little worst. Some of those things that he had to clean up from his high school days to his college basketball days, he has to the nth degree. And all of his best has been on display, and he's just been an unbelievable college player. He's been a better scorer than I think anybody could have anticipated. And that was the big change in Purdue last year, is when they really weaponized him to come off ball screens with Zach Edey and shoot. It really changed the way everybody had to defend Purdue. It really weaponized him to be more of a scorer, and really changed Purdue basketball in general. And, this is a great point guard school now, too, in addition to a great big man school. And it's 100% due to Braden Smith, who, Purdue saw something in that nobody else saw, or no one else acted on. It probably helped Purdue to a certain extent that he was recruited during COVID and nobody was out there watching him. But also, if they were out there watching him, sometimes the first impression is the only impression that matters to some people who get caught up in some of the superficial stuff. How big is a guy? How flashy is he? Things like that. How physically gifted is he? How strong is he? Things like that. Braden Smith's a hell of an athlete, but he's just a special point guard in the things that you either have or you don't as a player. He's got every one of them.
Certainly a special point guard. They'll need a special performance from him, a la what he's done against, a former great point guard, or I should say current great point guard, Mark Sears, a couple times in his college career. They'll need that coming up Friday night. Brian, as always, terrific insight. Your recap video will probably be posted as the sun rises on Saturday morning, so hopefully you get some rest. And as always, thank you for the time.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Brian Neubert, Gold and Black, right there on the Payless Liquors hotline.
All right, coming up in a moment, one more thing you need to know about tonight's game. Pay attention, Kylan, between the Lakers and the Pacers. Comes your way next on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
They're hearing that news.
Rake is the best.
Where you guys heading?
Looks like Hops and Hoagies.
Ooh, Hoagies and Hops.
Hoagies and Hops. Sorry about that.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it's up there, what, 52nd in Illinois? Or
Butler,
Boulevard.
Tarkington.
Yeah,
right?
42nd, 43rd.
Is it 42nd, 43rd? I just know I know how to get there. It's on Boulevard. That's all I know.
Great spot.
Yeah.
Hey, Monday was National Cheesesteak Day, and also the owner's Christina. It was her birthday, so if
Were you
run
in there?
into her.
Were you in there on Monday?
They're closed on Mondays, but they celebrated on
I was
Sunday.
say, did you get a
Love
special?
them.
I don't know if they
Oh.
opened special just for you or not. So.
I wish.
Man,
Big
checking that
Eagles
out.
contingent.
Hoagies.
No shock there from the Philly angle for the cheesesteaks. But yeah, great spot.
Yeah, gotta like that. All right, the Pacers do play at home tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers, and I believe, Kevin Bowen, that is the topic of our Jiffy Lube stat of the day today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Lakers enter tonight game having lost 3 straight. They are in 5th in the Western Conference. They lead the Pacific Division by 2.5 games over Golden State. Should they win the division, J.J. Redick would become the 8th head coach in Lakers history to win the division in his first year as head coach. 5 of the other 7 would go on to lead the Lakers to the NBA championship in their first season. On that list includes one Frank Vogel, Paul Westhead, Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, among others. The other 2, how about Jerry West and Mike Brown?
Ooh.
So some company there, to say the least.
Yeah. Frank Vogel. What's Frank doing right now?
Frank Vogel could write a book on some of the
He
people
could,
he's
man.
coached in the NBA, right?
I liked Frank Vogel.
Yeah, I mean,
Great dude.
championship level coach.
That was the bubble, right?
That was the bubble. The Mickey Mouse
Mhm.
championship is Pacers fans always like to remind me, but it counts all the same.
How about T.J. Warren in the bubble? You guys
Oh,
remember that
TJ
game?
Warren was on. Wasn't he average like 25 points a game in the bubble? Maybe
Boy,
even more.
I got to look that up. I swear he had 50 in that first game against the
Man, oh,
Sixers.
man.
I believe he did have a 50-point game, and he was the greatest player ever in the bubble.
I thought it was like the first game, too, of the bubble of like, man, we've needed this so badly, and here's T.J. Warren just looking like, I mean, hell, Steph, I'm trying to even look at it here.
Yeah, here it is, 53 points.
53, 20 of 29 from the floor, 9 of 12 from 3. Man, and then he had 34, 32, 30. I mean, he finally came back to earth a little bit there, but
It was crazy.
Bubble TJ Warren. They could use him.
he just 10-dayed it with somebody. Was it Philly?
I wouldn't surprise me. I mean,
Minnesota?
a guy who can score will always have a place in the NBA, especially
Swear
at
he
his
was
size.
Playing against the Pacers here recently.
Yeah. As far as the teams chasing the Pacers tonight, we've talked about the Bucks, who are 2 games, along with the Pistons, who are 2 games behind the Pacers right now for that 4th spot. And Milwaukee is playing in Denver. We've mentioned it a couple of times. Just terrible news for Damian Lillard, who you never know when he's going to be back with what he's out with right now, and that's blood clots. And we've seen Victor Wembanyama put on the shelf for the entire rest of the year, and that was back in January. So that's a hopefully he comes bouncing back out of that with flying colors, but that's a tough blow for Milwaukee and Damian.
So, James, you said you would rather play the Bucks, though, than the Pistons.
Yes,
if
the Bucks
Lillard is
without
out.
Lillard, absolutely, yes.
You don't believe the star player in the playoffs is who you want to avoid more so? I mean, Cade Cunningham obviously is a good player, but he's not Giannis.
I think that they're more. They just know who they are, and they're more of who they've been throughout the season, rather than the Bucks, who have to change a lot of things on the fly and put a lot on Giannis's plate. Like, I get he's a star player, but usually when you win in the playoffs with stars, they're plural, not just one. So, and mind you, they got rid of Chris Middleton and brought in Kyle Kuzma, who I don't know if you saw recently. He looks like the most unserious basketball player of all time. Some of the shots that he took the other night against Phoenix, I was just like, what are you doing? How did they win a championship with you in L.A.?
That was such an odd move to me at the deadline. But
But I think it's because they got cheaper and younger. But, again, if you're telling me that their top dogs are Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Kyle Kuzma, I take my chances with that over a Pistons squad that I believe just gets more confidence by the day.
Well, they have the night to themselves, so to speak, here in Indianapolis before we get going for all kinds of other basketball extravaganzas later on in the week between the Sweet 16 and the state championships. And I've said it a couple of times. I mean, it's what we do here in Indiana. Really looking forward to that. And I just don't want to see I know what happens. I don't want to see a ton of Lakers jerseys in that arena tonight. I would like it to be a decisive home court advantage.
Sorry.
And I think that more. I think they'll get more than you think, James.
I mean, I
do.
I've covered many of these games before.
Yeah,
I
cover
think
your
it's-
eyes if you don't want to see them.
I was like, it's
going to
be a very probably 50-50 split.
And look, I don't want to turn this into like a huge. I mean, it's more of a summer topic than anything. But I mentioned earlier in the show, it's just a geographic issue more than anything.
Chance to come see LeBron if you're in
a
Cincinnati
fan
or St. Louis.
In a 4-hour radius, this is your one time to see. I don't think these are like Pacers season ticket members that are like, oh, I'm wearing my LeBron jersey tonight. Like, I think at times we just kind of blow it out of proportion. It's just, frankly, where the Pacers are at on a map.
Well, let's go get it because they're a pretty good basketball team coming fresh off the Eastern Conference Finals. And like I said, you just got to almost get rid of that 10-15 start. And you think about who they are today. They're a 32-14 team, man. That's big time.
The way they've played as of late, Jeff, I would have never guessed early in the season this is where they would be at because they looked so bad. And I was like, oh, man, it is getting, as my pops would say, late early for this team. And so they've bounced back. And even Haliburton, I truly believe he's in contention to be like an all-NBA player. He has the chance to earn that honor. Now, the first 10, 15 games of the season, he was really, really bad. So maybe he doesn't get it, but I think that he has an argument to be 13 All-NBA.
Could he
be
set
saying
a record
something
for assist-to-turnover ratio in a year?
He might be. I mean, we've got to get Scotty on it.
Scotty?
But, I mean, what is it, 142 to 13?
Yeah, it's basically.
Since the All-Star break, and that's incredible.
Video game numbers, that's what he's doing.
He's on fire. Remember that old video game?
Oh, 1,000%. But it's also, I mean, again, he's averaging 20 points. Like, if TJ McConnell was doing this, obviously it'd be impressive, but, like, McConnell would be scoring, what, 8 or 10?
Right.
It's like, no, Haliburton's still giving you 20 a game.
He'll take that. And like I said, when everybody is clicking on all cylinders, it's a tough team, the Pacers, to play against. If Miles is hitting his outside shots, if Nembhard and those guys are doing their thing, like this is a tough team to match up with sometimes.
Absolutely. But, again, another opportunity for you to kind of show who you are and to keep this thing rolling. You're playing well as of late. And then, I mean, how about this? You're coming off a decisive win. How about another one, tonight against Lakers?
All right, so that's coming your way tonight. You can hear it right here beginning at 7 o'clock with the pregame. Pat Boylan has that. Mark Boyle with the play-by-play. If you do want to watch it at home, you got two choices tonight, ESPN or your local guys, which we love, Kristen Airy and Quinn Buckner and JJ and all those folks.
Oh,
so I'm looking forward to that.
Let's go.
All right, great job out of everyone this morning. Colin, have a great game tonight. Have fun. Jake at noon, JMV with Matt Painter at 3.